This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
When I was 17, it was a very good year. It was a very good year for small-town girls and soft summer nights. We'd hide from the lights on the village green. When I was 17.
Welcome, loyal listeners, and those of you who aren't loyal and are listening for the first time, to a very special giant-size edition of the Hard-Traveling Fanboys. I am Greg Phillips. With me, as always, in our obscenely large L-shaped, or is it cube-shaped at this point? I don't know.
It's an L. It's still an L.
Our large L-shaped studio in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, is Nick Duke. Nick, how's it going?
It's going wonderful, sir, and we should also mention that in addition to this being a giant-size edition, it is also our landmark 50th episode. And
that's right.
In something that's been a little surprising, I think, to you and I, compared to our column days of doing this anyway, we haven't missed a week yet. 50 straight weeks.
That's right, which makes us the longest-running weekly, episodic comic book podcast in all of Place to Be Nation.
That's how you do that.
Yeah, and we are here in the studios for big number 50, and we thought, what better occasion to celebrate than our 50th episode, and how better to celebrate it than by looking at DC Rebirth. We're looking at it from the ground up. This has been a monumental movement for DC Comics, and joining us is a veritable all-star cast of Place to Be Nation pop characters. We've got the man who is the point guard for Sellers Points. We've got Russell Sellers. Russell, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Greg. Thank you guys for having me back on to talk about one of my absolute favorite subjects.
Very, very, very good. On the other end, on the other coast, in fact, we have a gentleman who is known around the world as the only man who can handle Cracklin' Rosa. Todd Weber, how are you, sir?
Hard-Traveling Fanboys, what is up? Thank you for having me back on your show.
It's always our pleasure, Todd. You are the one that makes the magic happen, truly, here at PTB and Pop. He is the editing guru, ladies and gentlemen, that makes all these shows run, puts in all the music, makes it sound special and spectacular as all of our shows do every week. And he is also the host of Conversation Comics, by the way, where he is currently undergoing a tremendous series with Tim Capel looking at the John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men series. Meanwhile, many people in life are given the choice. We all are, really, at one point in our lives. Do you want to be a geek or do you want to be sassy? Well, we've got a woman who is both right here in the studio. Jennifer Smith, welcome to the Hard-Traveling Fanboys once again.
Thank you, guys. Congratulations on your 50th episode.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, I have a long list of people that I'd like to thank for this, primarily myself, and also, to a much lesser extent, Nick.
I echo those sentiments, Greg.
Yes. But with all that said and all that introductory garbage out of the way, let's get started on the most landmark company-wide movement that DC Comics has had since the last monumental movement that DC Comics had. And that, of course, is DC Rebirth. And people that have been listening to our podcast pretty well know what our histories are at this point, but just as a very, very brief reminder, everybody tell kind of approximately how long you've been reading DC Comics. Nick?
Started reading DC pretty much with Sinestro Corps War. DC more universe-wide stuff anyway. I'd been reading the Batman titles since about 2005, and then picked up Sinestro Corps War in 2006. So about 11 years now.
All right, very good. Todd?
Well, I used to think I went back to 81, 82, which was came with Justice League of America 200. But my mother found an old Treasury edition that I had from 1978 that was Superman versus Wonder Woman. Giant Treasury edition is a larger than average comic. It's basically I don't even know exactly how large the pages are. Maybe 18 by 26, something like that. Almost poster sized, and with Jose Luis Garcia Lopez art. So we're talking 1978.
Sweet. Nice. Well, the Treasury editions, were those the kind of comics that they printed the like the Superman, Spider-Man crossover on back in the day?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. If you had the intercompany crossovers, and a lot of times you'd have reprint editions in there too. But special versions like DC Hulk versus Hulk and Batman, that kind of thing. So yeah, this was a set in World War II era. The Baron Blitzkrieg was the villain. So very cool.
Very good. Russell, how about you, sir?
Off and on, all through my childhood. I mean, I was more of a Marvel kid whenever I was in elementary, middle, and high school. But would pick up an occasional DC comic in there. I had a real love affair with the Superboy title that was running concurrently with the CBS TV show from the 80s, if anybody remembers that. That was the only book that I was collecting pretty regularly out of DC. But it was actually the 2004 event, the original Green Lantern Rebirth, and the Batman Hush storyline that really ignited my my appreciation for DC and kind of made me an obsessive DC fanboy after that. So that's where it all truly begins, I think.
Excellent. And as people who listen to our podcast know, my first comic that I remember getting was the Superman. Oh gosh, what was the number? I remember it was 1988. I believe it was Superman number 14, and it was for 1988, and it had Superman and Green Lantern on the cover, flying through a bunch of weird spherical objects. John Byrne was the writer and artist on it, and pretty much my whole life I was a DC fan. And when I got back into comics in 2002, it was Batman Hush that took me back in, and I've never really looked back from there. Now I saved Jennifer for last because she's got the most appropriate story for our podcast today. So Jennifer, remind the folks of kind of how you got into DC Comics.
Well, I would say about a year ago is when I kind of started picking up things like The Long Halloween, Hush, things like that, Green Lantern Rebirth. But I'm going to kind of consider my fandom starting with Rebirth. So not quite a year.
Awesome. Well, for those of us who have been reading DC for a long time, Rebirth comes just a few years after, well, I'd say 5 years after the last major company-wide relaunch of sorts, which was the New 52, which was aiming to do a little bit of a different thing. The New 52 was aiming to restart virtually the entire universe from scratch, although there were some notable exceptions. But and kind of and de-aged all the heroes and kind of reset them all to their original versions and iterations with, of course, modern updates and whatnot. A year now into DC Rebirth, because that is, as I should have mentioned at the top of the show, the reason for this is that DC Rebirth is now about approximately a year old. So a year into Rebirth, how does it compare thus far to what you remember of the first year of the New 52? Russell, let's start with you.
I would say that it feels a bit more inclusive, surprisingly so, since it was going back to a lot of the classic concepts that DC had working for them prior to Flashpoint. But I would also say that it feels, lighter and not nearly as, I guess, dark and gritty is kind of what the New 52 felt like in a lot of ways. But I think maybe the biggest change has been that there's more diversity within the lineup now. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about, since it was billed as a return to the past. But I don't know if you guys remember this, but during the New 52, whenever the book started launching, they all kind of had a sameness about them. They went with that consistent tone and consistent feel across the board. But Rebirth, I would say, has been an initiative that plays around with various different tones within its books. It actually takes into account more about what the characters are really about, and allows the creative teams, I guess, to play a little bit more with the look and feel of the different books. So I would say that Rebirth took into account character over everything compared to the New 52.
Yeah, and kind of to piggyback on what you were saying there, I think, to me, the biggest difference is the greater diversity in styles, perhaps, but also just a general consistency across the board in terms of quality, with some exceptions, of course. But I remember when the New 52 started, for the most part, there were some really good books. I mean,
Sure.
Swamp Thing, Animal Man, the All-Star Western, but for the most part, the best books, the ones that most people talked about, were the ones that kind of carried over from what was being done before the New 52. Green Lantern, Batman, and to an extent, Jeff Johns relaunched Aquaman, but he was playing with a lot of the same themes that he played with Aquaman and Brightest Day. So, I think in this case, there are far fewer of stuff like The Dark Knight or the first arc of Detective Comics or the old version of Red Hood and the Outlaws. There are far few of those, and there is more of a consistent quality to the books. Todd, what do you make of the first year of Rebirth compared to the first year of the New 52?
I think in a word, New 52 was world building, and Rebirth is more about refined characters, and really, like, you can pick up the book and you know exactly what that character is about, who he or she is. And each arc seems to be just more about building the characters up. It's been very consistent. Like Russell said, everything's been very, very strong. Another thing that's kind of a trip is there's so many books. There's bi-monthly Aquaman, Superman action, Detective Batman, Green Lantern. We're all spending a lot more on books than we were during the New 52, unless we were buying every single New 52 title. But even though there were a lot of things that I loved about the first year or so of the New 52, I actually liked the Grant Morrison, Rags Morales Superman story. I liked that we had George Perez art on a couple books, but most of all, I liked that Jeff Johns was free books back then. I still prefer what's going on in Rebirth. The stories are a lot more accessible, and it just seems to be a lighter tone all the way through.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that as well. Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting for me because around the start of the New 52 was one of the times that I took kind of a hiatus from comics, or from monthly comics reading anyway. I was in the midst of a move and a job change, and finances were a little weird, so I just kind of took a hiatus. And so by the time I came around to the New 52, they were probably getting close to that 1 year mark, so I already had heard from people what was worth catching up on and what wasn't. So by the time I finally started buying New 52 books, I was only going back and buying, like, the Scott Snyder Batman, the Jeff Johns Aquaman, the Jeff Johns Justice League, Green Lantern, things like that. And so really the only stuff from the early New 52 that I actually read was the good stuff. Now, I've gone back since and read a couple of things like that Detective Comics book, which was, I don't even know what the fuck it was, honestly. And, various other titles from that period, but I can't really comment too much on the overall, consistency of the line. I will say that's been the biggest surprise from Rebirth is the consistency, like you guys mentioned, not just from a tone and a quality standpoint, but how characters that are appearing in different books feel like the same character. It seems like there's been a real emphasis on consistency of characterization, whereas in the New 52, to go back to the Detective Comics example, if you were reading Scott Snyder's Batman and then you picked up Detective Comics, it was almost like you were reading two different characters.
Yep.
And it didn't really, flow like a Batman family is supposed to flow. So, yeah.
That's another good point, the consistency in characterization. And kind of one of the hallmarks of what Jeff Johns wanted to do with the DC Rebirth special was restore things that were lost in the DC universe. And one of those things, I think, is that idea that there is a shared universe. Because I feel like at times that almost didn't feel the case. Scott Snyder's Batman, for instance, felt completely divorced from everything else that was going on, to its benefit. But, it's interesting to be able to read Batman now and maybe read a little like those classic editor's notes, Todd, that they used to have back when we were reading. They will tell you, check out Aquaman number 13 for Superman's confrontation with the King of Atlantis or something. There's been a little bit more of that, and there's been a little bit more of that kind of, it's an old school feel, but with modern storytelling, which I've enjoyed.
Yeah, and don't forget that towards the end of the New 52, Dan DiDio himself had said during the DCU era that continuity, and consistency in that shared universe was kind of being de-emphasized a little bit. So, it's certainly a 180 approach from that.
Definitely. Well, what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to look at each of the we've went and divided the Rebirth titles, each of the monthly and occasionally semi-monthly titles into families of books. And we're going to go through these families of books and kind of talk about what's worked, what hasn't worked, and things of that nature. And the first family of books we're going to look at is the most popular DC character, the biggest selling DC character, and that is Batman. The Batman family of books, which for our purposes includes the titles Batman, Detective Comics, Batgirl, Nightwing, All-Star Batman, Batwoman, and Batman Beyond. So to get us started, I'm going to go to you, Jennifer. I know you're a big Batman fan. What books do you think have benefited the most from DC Rebirth? Now, I know you weren't reading beforehand, so it's kind of hard to compare. But in your opinion, what books have benefited from maybe the promotional side of DC Rebirth?
I've got to say that Tom King's Batman has been my favorite in the Bat family, although I am quite in love with Batwoman. It's kind of difficult for me because I love Batman very much, but not very versed in a lot of his in his, I don't want to say villains because I do know a lot of his villains, but I think that Batman helped me get into the groove of reading weekly comics, and that kind of set me off on a lot of the other titles because I felt like Batman was familiar to me, but also new to me at the same time, giving me kind of a foothold into the universe. Cool. Actually, the 4 books that I'm reading now are Batman, Detective, Nightwing, and Batwoman. So that's my list.
Awesome. Actually, that's a good point. I should probably ask people which titles of this family they are pulling. Let me go over to you, Nick, and let's talk about. I know you're definitely a huge Batman fan. Which of these books have you read, and but most importantly, what books have benefited the most from Rebirth, in your opinion?
So I at least read the number 1 or the Rebirth, depending on which one they had, of all of these books. And the ones that I am still reading today would be Batman, Detective Comics, All-Star Batman, and Batwoman. And I would say, personally, I know that the New 52 Batwoman title that she had there for a little while was very well regarded. So I can't really comment in terms of comparing the couple of issues of the Batwoman title we've had to what that was. So I can't really say how much it's benefited, but I will say it's been an outstanding start to that series. But I would say the one that's benefited the most to me has clearly been Detective Comics. So many times in the past, in recent memory, Detective Comics is very clearly the secondary Batman title, and it seems like, people struggle, the creative teams, the writers struggle to come up with a real concept for it, a real way to differentiate it from the other Batman books and make it feel important. And I think the decision by James Tynion IV and Jeff Johns and whoever else was in on it to turn Detective Comics into something of a Bat team book, which is something I've said we needed for a long time, was absolutely brilliant. It is, for my money anyway, the best team book currently on DC stands. I love it each and every month. It nails all these characters. Every character gets a moment to shine, and every character feels important and distinct. It's outstanding. So for me, because of that ability to set itself apart from the rest of the Batman titles in terms of concept, it's got to be Detective Comics.
Yeah, and since you said it, I'll go ahead and echo everything you said. I have that as well as my book that benefited the most, because I admit that I only sporadically read Detective Comics in the New 52, but every time I would, it just kind of felt like a really far less interesting version of what Scott Snyder was doing on
Absolutely.
Batman.
Yep.
Whether it be the John Layman run, whether it be the I believe Brian Buccellato had a run on it.
Yep.
It wasn't bad. It was just not terribly interesting, and certainly not interesting enough to get me to subscribe to it. So I definitely agree that Detective, much to my surprise, came out of Rebirth and kind of really caught me off guard, and has been an excellent book. Let's go over to Todd. Todd, what Batman books do you think benefited the most from Rebirth?
And which ones are you reading?
Detective. Okay, the first thing, I'm reading Detective, Batman, and All-Star Batman, which I refer to as...
This is going to be David Sunday's favorite podcast, by the way.
Snyderman is what I call All-Star Batman. But Detective has benefited the most. Just balance it. You have this balanced team and this look at different characters, and I loved how Tim Drake-centric it was at first, and hopefully will be eventually. And I just like that how Tynion has...
I don't think we know.
Yeah.
I don't think we know how to pronounce it.
We don't have a mole in the DC offices like we do with Ben Morris, but yeah, I like how he's used the book to spotlight characters that would eventually get their own book, or just to bring, the characters like, Cassandra Cain to the forefront. Yeah. So Detective has benefited the most. It's been very consistent from the get-go, but I also like what Tom King has done with Batman, the main book, and it's had some very high highs, but it hasn't necessarily been that consistent. The first arc was kind of weak, in my opinion, but he's finding his way, and if he's allowed to tell a story that's not too where editors are saying, oh, you have to go set up this crossover event, King does very well. I really like the rooftop story quite a bit, and the Bane story we're getting into. I Am Bane is pretty cool. So, yeah, I think Detective still overall has been the classic line, although Snyderman, that book is pretty good too, and I like the larger-than-life look at the villains that it provides.
I love
even
that.
though it's $5 a pop.
Yeah, too rich for my blood, but I've heard good things, and I'm going to get the trade whenever I come into some money.
And you're about to start getting digital codes for it.
Allegedly, yes. That's what my sources tell me.
Reports indicate.
Yes. So let's go over to Russell. Russell,
Me.
what Batman family books are you reading, and what books have benefited the most from Rebirth?
Currently reading Batman, Detective, Nightwing, All-Star, Batwoman. I just dropped Batman Beyond, but that's not necessarily due to extreme low quality or anything. I just decided to trade weight it since I couldn't find anybody to buy or trade my digital code that's going to be coming up. So I was like, I'll just wait. But to echo what you guys said, Detective Comics is absolutely the book that benefited the most because I read every issue of Detective Comics through the New 52, and to kind of echoing a lot of what you guys said, but it also, every issue, it just felt like maybe we're on the cusp of this finally getting good, but it suckered me in with that. And it was like, okay, maybe it's going to improve next issue. But that was the consistent thing through like 52 issues of the book. So how stupid do I have to be to keep falling for it?
Well, Russell, they kept changing creative teams so often that you kept thinking, like, I'm going to stay with it through the next creative change, and then the next creative change, and the next creative change.
I couldn't tell you how excited I got whenever they said John Layman was taking over the book, because I'm a big Chew fan. So I was like, okay, that could be really great. And I had never heard of Jason Fabok at the time, but he was the artist coming on. I saw his promo piece art, and I was like, wow, that looks really great. I wonder if his interior art was going to be like that. But to its credit, that's the run that gave us Jason Fabok, and he's been a superstar since.
Right.
And the Francis Manapul and Brian Bussolato run, it was pretty, but it was also pretty bland, and there was nothing really to that. So, yeah, Detective by a long measure has benefited the most from this Rebirth initiative. But I do want to say that I have really enjoyed Nightwing up to this point. It hasn't reached like the soaring highs of where Detective Comics is, because clearly that is the top tier Batman book. But I really appreciate what they've been able to do with Dick Grayson, what Tim Seeley and Javier Fernandez, mostly Javier Fernandez and more recently Marcus O, have been able to do with the character. They've refocused him as a more grounded hero, and while they do acknowledge and even utilize some of his more interesting villains from the 90s, I appreciate how they've made them a little bit more, I guess, sympathetic in some more recent stories, and that they've genuinely taken a step forward with Dick Grayson, and more recently had a nice little team up with him and Damian that was a nice callback to the Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely Batman and Robin run, complete with a reappearance of their version of the Batmobile, which I actually really enjoy the scene from. So that said, yes, Detective is still the top. I do enjoy what Tom King is doing on Batman. I agree with what Todd said about that first arc. It was a little off. I thought that, and I know that not everybody in the group is high on this story, but I actually really enjoyed I Am Suicide. And I love how it flowed right into Rooftops, and then that connects into I Am Bane. It's like it's just one big story arc. And that kind of works both to the benefit and detriment of Tom King's efforts, because you can tell.
I definitely feel it's going to read better in trade, I think.
I think it's going to read best in omnibus, because that's how Tom King seems to write. He's not writing for a trade. He's writing for a gigantic collection.
Yeah, I mean, that Psycho Pirate plotline has really been ongoing since, issue 2 or 3, and even if you want to connect it to the Gotham Girl stuff, that goes all the way back to issue 1, so that's kind of a big, 20-issue story at this point?
Yeah, he has interconnected all of this, so if you start reading Tom King's Batman run, I mean, honestly, you probably could jump in at Rooftops if you really wanted to, but the very next story arc, you're probably going to be like, what the hell is going on? And it really is written for the omnibus or for the monthly if you started at the beginning. But I would say that accessibility, it doesn't get high marks, but for a steady upward trend of quality, I got to give it to him. He seems to have had a long-form plan, and he's executing it in his way. And so long as he's allowed to do that, I think we're going to continue to see really good things out of that book.
Yeah, let's hope so. And let's move on to the next question, which is, are you more or less interested in this family of titles, the Batman family as a whole, than you were before Rebirth? Nick, let's start with you.
I'll say slightly more, just because while I'm reading many more books, I don't think anything can match the level of interest I had in that Scott Snyder Batman run. How sucked in I was, and how just waiting and anxiously anticipating every issue. That was pretty much a monthly thing. So while there's nothing that I anticipate on that level, it's made up for it with a lot more consistent quality. Because like right now, like I said, I'm reading Batman, Detective, All-Star, and Batwoman, and I really, really enjoy each and every one of them every month. So I'll say it's got me slightly more interested in the line as a whole.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention which ones I'm pulling. Batman, Detective, Nightwing. Those are the three that I'm pulling right now. And as far as me, I am definitely more interested in the line as a whole than I was before Rebirth. Because before Rebirth, the only one that I was interested in reading was Batman. I was interested in Grayson, but I was hopelessly behind on it, so I gave up on ever getting it until I could get the trades or whatever. So yeah, I'm definitely more interested because of the consistent quality across the line. Jennifer, I'm assuming that you're much more interested.
My answers will be very predictable to this one, but yes. And I will say the height of my interest lies with Batwoman.
Nice.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, let me ask you this, Jennifer, kind of on a related subject here. What was it that got you to try out the Batman books in Rebirth?
Well, it's Batman, but I just went into Rebirth wanting to try everything. I just went ape shit. I just kind of picked up everything every week and slowly weeded out from there, although not very much.
Right.
And my highlight was Rooftops.
Let's save that one for a minute because we're going to revisit that one.
Gotcha.
Let's go over to Russell. Are you more or less interested in the Batman family of titles than you were before Rebirth?
My answer is pretty much the same as Nick's. It's none of these books have me as hyped as what Scott Snyder's and Greg Capullo's Batman had, because it's Scott Snyder is still writing All-Star, but there's just something about him and Capullo together. That team just made what I'm just going to go ahead and say I think is the best Batman run of all time. But as a quality level across the board, it's so much higher than it was in the New 52. So my enjoyment of it has gone up considerably. So I would say that I'm pulling more Bat books now than I ever was in the New 52. By the end of it, I had dwindled down to just the two. Mm-hmm. And to a lesser extent, well, I guess we could count Robin, Son of Batman, but that came near the end.
Oh, let's not count it as anything, please.
Oh, come on now. The Patrick Gleason thing was fun, at least while he was on the book.
I am Robin.
Nick, you're thinking about a different book.
I thought he said Damian, Son of Batman. Excuse me.
No, I said Robin, Son of Batman. Different book, Patrick Gleason book. The Damian book I never actually read.
Right. Okay.
I never read that.
Oh.
And the We Are Robin, I read it, and I look back on it, and I'm like, well, that's a thing that exists. That's all I can say for it. But, my enjoyment as a whole, my interest as it pertains to all these books, much higher. And even though I'm not reading all of them, I'm interested in what's happening in all of them, and I think that that's been the key to the success of any line in Rebirth or any line of comics. Is even if you're not reading all the titles, you can still be intrigued by the ideas and the stories that are being presented.
Excellent. Mr. Weber, your thoughts. Are you more or less interested in the Bruce Batman family than you were before Rebirth?
Yeah, technically, I guess more, although just to echo everyone, Capullo and Snyder's Batman book, The Mothership, was just so awesome. You looked forward to it. It was always the highlight of the month. But, I'm buying 5 Bat books a month instead of just 1 to 2, which I was before during New 52, depending on, I think I bailed on Detective pretty early, and I'm just not a Nightwing reader. I guess I was getting the original Batgirl, the Gail Simone Batgirl run before they changed her character too into the Babstar. What was the storyline? Batgirl of Burnside.
Burnside. Yeah.
Yeah. So I gave up. I read a couple of those and said, "This is a thing that exists, but it's not for me." But I still have lots of great Batgirl stories that I can read. So I guess technically it's more, but not as fervent for just the one book. But still, I mean, if we look at dollars out of my pocket, I'm spending a lot more on Bat books now than I was 2 years ago.
Excellent. And certainly all of us, it seems, are more interested across the line than we were before Rebirth. Certainly Snyder and Capullo's Batman run was a juggernaut, but it felt like the rest of the Batman family lagged behind significantly after that.
May I interject?
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely.
We haven't had a Joker appearance since Rebirth, correct? Rebirth specials.
That is correct.
Unless you're counting the stuff in Harley Quinn. He has been in that book. He has...
He puts his stuff in Harley Quinn?
Well,
quite frankly.
Well, he did at one time. We know that happened. Not on panel, maybe, but I think the implication was there. And I'm not gonna make a Bill Cosby joke. I'm not gonna make a Bill Cosby joke.
Just say yes, and we'll move on.
Well, yes. I was just saying that Joker has appeared in Rebirth, just not in any of the actual Bat titles. But
Right.
He will be coming up. I guess it's a flashback story in Tom King's run in a month or so.
I think we gotta get through the button crossover first. So I think in May.
Yeah, something
May
like
or
that.
June, something like that. I don't really remember because I think there's also an I Am Bane epilogue or something that's happening after the button.
Could it be June, July?
It could be June, July. Yes, it could, Greg. An excellent point on your part.
Thank you. Todd, you were saying?
No, I was just... all I wanted to do was say they're doing so well, and no Joker as of yet. No Joker storyline. So that's pretty awesome. I think at this point in the New 52, we'd had at least 3 Joker appearances or Joker issues. So
he's a bit of a crutch. He's a bit of a crutch for Batman creators in multiple media. So it's been nice to see. So let's move on to what has been the highlight of Rebirth in the Batman family thus far. And I feel like this one has popped up already a couple times in people's mentions, but I'm going to go ahead and say the highlight to me of Rebirth for the Batman family has been the 2-part story Rooftops in Tom King's Batman with Mitch Gerads on art. And this is one of my favorite Batman stories in quite a while, probably since Endgame from Scott Snyder. An excellent story with just incredible art that drew me in, admittedly because I'm a huge fan of the Batman-Catwoman relationship, but it delivered a really compelling story. I loved the artwork in this one. It was so different from what you get in your typical monthly, bi-weekly superhero comics. So Rooftops in Batman is my highlight of Rebirth in the Bat family. Jennifer, what about you?
I'm the same. I'm a sucker for Batman and Catwoman as well. And it's so well done. It wasn't cheesy. It was sweet and, had this kind of soft quality to it. And they also got to have a little fun, in various ways. And I don't know. I think it was a nice little, after everything that had happened up to that point, it was just a nice little interlude.
Yeah, definitely. It's a kind of story that doesn't really get done a lot anymore. The little 2-issue in between arc between, the everything is written for these 6-part story arcs now. So it was kind of interesting to see. Nick, what in your opinion was the highlight thus far in the Bat family?
Well, to echo you guys, for me, I think in terms of a story, it's got to be Rooftops. For all the reasons you guys just mentioned, it manages to have that sentimental quality without ever feeling sappy and overbearing, which is important for a guy like me. And I really loved it. But then as a title, as I've said before, Detective Comics. So those would be my 2 answers but I feel like we've addressed them pretty heavily already.
Agreed. Todd, in your opinion, the highlight thus far in the Bat family could be a title, a story, whatever.
Definitely Rooftops, the 2-issue story arc. I'm going to go ahead and say this is the best non-Scott Snyder Batman story I've read since Paul Dini back in 1 year later, I think. It was a long time ago at this point.
Yeah, when he was doing Detective, right? Right,
and then we had Grant Morrison for the most part, and then sorry, there you go. But then Scott Snyder came out of Detective. I think just looking at individual stories or arcs, that was just it was a tremendous 2-issue, and the art actually elevated it. So I thought that was really great. So yeah, that's been the highlight. Although consistency wise, I'll go ahead and give it to Detective as being a highlight too. All-Star, though, don't go to sleep on All-Star. I think just that first couple Romita issues were very polarizing, even though Two-Face is awesome. But overall, that's going to be a very strong book here and now and in the future.
Yeah, the second story arc, Todd, has been just amazing. Like, on par with some of the best stuff from the Capullo run, in my opinion. I have loved his Ends of the Earth deals so far.
Well, speaking of I have no transition. Let's go over to Russell for your opinion of the highlight of Rebirth in the Batman family thus far.
Yeah, you could have said, speaking of bringing things to a screeching halt, I'm going to be a little different because I'm not going to say that I didn't absolutely love Rooftops, because I did. It was a powerful, powerful stuff, brilliant writing and art. But the one that hits for me personally was that first 6-issue arc on Detective Comics, The Rise of the Batmen. Mostly because it did something with Clayface that I never thought was possible. It made me give a damn about him. It really made me care about this character. And it did that in one issue. It did that in the very first issue of Detective within Rebirth. That scene in the theater when he's watching his old movies, and you can feel the heartbreak. And as much as that is, a credit to James Tynion's writing, that's really the heavy lifting from Eddie Barrows on art that brought the emotional impact of the facial expressions from Clayface just to vivid screaming life for me. And it was like I stopped seeing, a virtual mustache twirling villain, and I could see the person, the human being behind the emotion, and it was just pitch perfect. And
it feels like the first time in the modern era, anyway. I believe Alan Moore did a few Clayface stories in the '80s that might have been along these lines. I can't remember, but
I think they were dealing with a different version, like an earlier version of Clayface, as opposed to the one that we know and love now.
But in the modern era, it feels like the first time the comics have really even attempted to do what the animated series did, which is humanize Clayface and make him, a tragic figure as opposed to like you said, a mustache twirling villain.
It really did, and it has continued to work for me, because even though Clayface hasn't gotten quite as much spotlight recently, when they do remind you of his story, when they do give him moments, they continue to advance it forward, and they do it in a way that has a strong emotional arc. And especially in some of the more recent issues, and the big anniversary issue, I believe, what was it, 950 that just came out? Yep. In that issue, there's a segment that within that collection of stories that focuses on Clayface and gives us some insight into what's happening to him with his powers. And his reaction to it was, I won't lie, I teared up a little bit. I was like, that really hit me. So, in terms of quality and in terms of the highlight of this line, that opening story, and to point towards something that Todd mentioned before, before I knew what was going to happen with Tim Drake, whenever we got to that scene, I legit thought they did it, because I had avoided all spoilers. I had no idea what was happening, and I read it clean. And as I did, it hit me, and I don't think it hit me harder than when Batman and Stephanie Brown have their moment together. They're in mourning, and it just, man, what a heavy emotional moment, drawn expertly. I want to say that that might have been Martinez on art in that one. I don't know if Barrows drew that, but whoever did, legendary status off of those few panels. Just outstanding work.
Yeah, when you think back to some of the great, most iconic Batman panels, it seems like so many of them are of mourning, of whether it's Batman holding the body of Jason Todd, I believe that was Jim Aparo art, and then, or whether it's the breaking of the bat, or whether it's what was it a Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams story where he's in the sewers and he can't save the girl back in the early 70s? But these are kind of the most iconic, some of the most iconic Batman images, and I certainly thought the artwork of the mourning that was going on there was tremendously done. But let's kind of has everybody gotten in their highlight thus far? I believe that's everybody.
Yes.
I think so.
Very good. Let's move on to the low light of Rebirth in the Batman family. Let's start with let's keep it on you, Russell. What to you has been the low light in the Batman family?
Batgirl. It's really something when I can decide that I absolutely hate a book off of one issue. Yep. and that's exactly what happened whenever I picked up Batgirl Rebirth #1. It was Hope Larson and Raphael Albuquerque, an artist that I tend to love, but the colors on the book were just weird. It was like there was a lot of orange and green going on for no apparent reason, and in places that didn't make any sense. I find thought bubbles kind of aggravating, and especially like in the modern context when it was like, why are you doing this other than out of nostalgia? And the story, the way the characterization of Barbara just felt off to me. It did not feel like a Batgirl book. It did not feel like Barbara anymore. And this is coming from somebody who read the entire Brendan Fletcher and Cameron Stewart Babs Tarr run, when I thought they were doing a pretty good job with the character overall. But then when I got to this Hope Larson run, I was like, I don't even recognize this. This doesn't feel like any version of Batgirl I've ever read. And it introduces one of the stupidest names for a character I've ever seen. Are you fucking kidding me? Fruit Bat. How did that get past editorial? Who the fuck thought that was an intimidating name? Fruit Bat. I'm sorry. That sounds like the first person to get their ass kicked.
That was actually an idea from Dusty Rhodes, apparently. He sat in on a creative.
He's the Fruit Bat Daddy.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay, baby. Your name is Dean Ambrose, but your nickname ain't gonna be no lunatic fringe. It's gonna be the Fruit Bat Daddy.
And at that point, I was like, Seinfeld gif.
Yep.
I'm out. That was a double flusher of an issue, and we're done.
God, a double flusher. Those are almost as bad as triple flushers.
They're one less.
That's another story for another time. Nick, I heard you audibly nodding in agreement with a lot of what Russell was saying. What is your pick for the low light of the Batman family?
Russell summed up Batgirl pretty much perfectly. I mean, one issue and I was out because it was awful. But I'll throw you another one just because it's something that I actually read to its conclusion for some unknown reason. As much as I have enjoyed Detective Comics and Batman, Night of the Monster Men was one of the worst things.
Oh.
I mean, it was just god
Fully
awful.
agree.
Like, I don't know what I don't even understand what they were attempting to do with that book. The only purpose of it seemed to be to get the Psycho Pirate from Hugo Strange, and we could have done that in an issue without this bizarre, awful story that we got, where, like, nothing felt important or nothing, there was no tension to it at all, and, like, even the monster designs were kind of just awful. I mean, everything about it was was just generally boring, which is something that I can't say for most of the Batman line to this point.
Go ahead and say it, Nick. You've been waiting. We haven't heard you say it in about a year. Go ahead and say it. What is it? How would you describe it?
It was a boring story featuring boring characters doing boring things.
There we go.
Much like the movie Elizabethtown.
Shut up about that. Moving on, Jennifer, do you have a pick for the low light of Rebirth for this Batman?
I'm going to agree with Nick, although when it was kind of early in the run, so it was kind of like my first kind of crossover situation, and I was digging it at first, and this week I went back and reread it, and I was like, no, I can't do that. I was like, obviously, about a year into this, I'm just beyond Night of the Monster Man, at least, so I can at least say that.
The moment where they turned Dick into a monster and like had him did a Batman versus Dick fight for like the 800th time in the last 3 years, I was just rolling my eyes so hard. I was like, do we really need to see this again? Because not only did it give Batman an opportunity to kick Nightwing's ass, he was kicking his ass and saving him simultaneously, which is like the most common like trope in all of Nightwing comics.
Oh my lord! I know. I was having a Jim Ross at WrestleMania 19 moment. You're beating me over the head with Batman and Nightwing fighting each other. For God's sake!
You mean you weren't having an spank it moment?
Spank it. Oh, that's another podcast, my friend.
I don't know that anybody wants to listen to us spank it, for the record.
Hey, you know what? There's a lot of niche markets out there, Nick. Todd,
there's somewhere out there is a musical remix of that has got to make it into this episode somehow.
Todd will find it if it's there. You can trust me on that. Todd, what is your pick for the low light thus far in the Batman family?
I haven't enjoyed the All-Star Batman backups very much. I guess if I just sat down and read them as a line, it's kind of like Walking Dead. I never quite, oh wait, this happened? Where are we in the story? They kind of throw me off. So I guess I'm going to have to dig those out. But I didn't enjoy Night of the Monster Men, and I had totally erased any memory of Batgirl Rebirth, which I ended up buying, I recall, and I looked at it and I hated it. So what about Batgirl and Birds of Prey? Is that a Bat Family book technically, or is that in Teen Books?
We're saving that for the Teen Books, I believe.
Okay, well that doesn't count, but yeah. So I'll go ahead and say I'll bring the backups, which I haven't liked a whole lot, to the table, but I'll second you guys in that Night of the Monster Men and Batgirl Rebirth #1 were all kind of eh. But it's still we saw a lot worse during New 52.
Agreed. And for me, first of all, I'm going to start out by saying, objectively, without question, Batgirl and the Night of the Monster Men were worse. So those would be my picks 1 and 1A. But just for the sake of diversity and variety, I'm going to go ahead and say, it may be an unpopular thing to throw in here, I hated the ending of I Am Suicide. The last issue of it in particular. I thought it wrapped up way too conveniently, way too quickly. Things just happened, it felt like. It felt very, very abbreviated. Especially, I consider it the worst issue of King's Batman to this point, but it was followed by the best issue of King's Batman to this point, in my opinion. So it's kind of illustrated a little bit of my experience with Batman at this point, where it will come close to losing me, and then there will be just this amazing 10 out of 10 issue that hooks me back in. So but I have to go with that end of that I Am Suicide arc. I think we talked about it, Nick, on the show, and it was just not a very satisfying conclusion to what seemed like it was building up to something more. And I think it is building up to something more, but it's playing out. It's such a slow build game that it lost me there for that issue.
Devil's advocate here, Greg. What if, just supposing from an editorial sense, since the 2-issue arc is such an anomaly, do you think editor said, okay, you can stretch out I Am Suicide to a normal size arc, or I can give you a one-issue special for Rooftops? You know what I'm saying? Trade off.
Yeah, I'm following you. That very well could have been what happened. Yeah.
And with 2 books a month, things are happening awfully fast with writing. So perhaps he had to tie them up. But I get you too. It did seem like it kind of just went, okay, dun 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 dun. It's done.
Yeah. I think Batman like healing his broken back by stretching was odd too, but that's all right. All right, now let's go to a fun question. What change would you like to see in the Batman family moving forward? Let us start this time out with Todd. Todd, what change would you like to see going forward in the Batman family?
I'd like to see Batgirl have an accident and become Oracle again.
That's controversial, Todd, but I actually like it. Barbara Gordon was my favorite when she was Oracle. I'll put it that
way. And then Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain can alternate as the new Batgirl.
Would they be like 50-50, 70-30? How would that work?
I don't know. Oh, and Damian can die too.
Oh man. Oh, he's already died once.
This man.
Todd, you are a monster.
He already died once and then came back almost immediately thereafter.
Todd Weber is essentially the Joker wanting to paralyze Batgirl and kill Robbins.
Well,
that explains where Joker's been all this time.
It was me all along.
Hey,
he's one of the three.
You're one of the three.
Hey, there's 3 Jokers now. Yeah, one of them is Todd Weber.
Ha ha! I'm the old one. Ha ha!
Oh, come on.
So do you put your face paint on over your mustache?
Yes, over my, which is weird because it's already so white that, you know. Anyway.
Oh, God.
No, yeah, I don't know. I mean, for real answers as far as that pertaining to the core Bat books, I guess maybe integrate Nightwing a little bit more to books like Detective. That would be kind of cool.
Cool. Yeah, no, and hey, man, any suggestion is valid on this question. Absolutely. For mine, the one change that I would like, and I will, first of all, no spoilers because I haven't caught up to Batman yet. I just finished Rooftops, so I've still got some more reading to do, obviously. I would like to see, and I have no real thought that this is actually going to happen, but this is, my wish for what I'd like to see coming up in this next year. I would like to see them have Batman and Catwoman have a full-time relationship and just try it for a while. Like, there was oh God, who was the writer in the 80s that tried that for a while in the weird, like, between the Crisis and between year one, who was writing Batman back then? Do you know, Todd?
Doug Mensch was writing a lot of it.
Yeah, I think it was him. And he wrote their relationship for a while. And I would love to see Tom King do that. He writes them so well together, and see that kind of be a story that plays out over the books of how these two characters do actually trying to have a relationship instead of the whole kind of cliche at this point, well, we can never do it. It's never meant to be. And they never try. So I'd like to see that play out and make that kind of a full-time thing going forward, at least for a while, see what happens. Let's move over to Jennifer. What change would you like to see in the Batman line?
Actually, I really like that idea. I wish I had come up with that. I like that a lot. But, early in the Batman books, Alfred and Bruce had a lot of scenes together, stuff that I loved, funny stuff and sweet stuff. But it seems like Alfred is not – he's had a couple moments in recent books, but I'd like to see more Alfred. Maybe even just a couple of books focused on Alfred.
Perhaps Alfred applies suntan lotion.
You may be
Scott Snyder
pretty soon in All-Star.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and Scott Snyder wrote a killer Alfred first arc. Oh, that's sorry. I was trying to make a joke there that only Nick would get. But anyway, yeah, Alfred does show up a little bit more frequently in All-Star.
Yeah.
Well, very good. That's a good suggestion, though. I think Alfred is a generally underutilized character in the DC universe because every time he appears, it's pretty much money. And that's a character, by the way, in Alfred, that of all of the Batman characters, I would argue that he has been the most consistently well-written because I feel like no matter what writer, whether it's Grant Morrison, whether it's Scott Snyder, whether it's, Jeff Loeb, whoever, they always seem to write Alfred really well. He just seems to be an easy character to write. So,
and he's even good on Gotham.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he's probably the best part of that show.
Wait,
and,
what is Gotham?
It's known collectively on the internet by a certain term. I can't place it right now. Hashtag Gotham sucks.
Oh, there it is. I was going to pitch to Russell for the catchphrase, but never mind.
Greg beat me to it, so when Miranda listens to this, she can be mad at him now.
For the record, if Miranda wants to be mad at people, I mean, like, we came up with, Greg, you and I came up with that, 2 years ago at this point? My feelings on it haven't changed.
I have tried.
Much like God, we did develop the hashtag Gotham sucks.
I have tried and failed to explain that. I still get thrown under the bus.
To the point where, my wife has been binge watching Shameless on Showtime for the past few weeks, and every time I walk through the room and see that stupid fucking kid that plays Jerome, I just want to throw a brick at my television.
That is anger I can relate to.
I told her, I was like, I wish they would kill him off on your fucking Shameless show just because I want that kid to never work again in Hollywood.
Well, you know what? You're on a roll, Nick. You're worked up. You're angry. What is the one change you would like to see going forward in the Batman family line?
Not an anger-based suggestion, but I think they've done such a great job of building up this team in Detective Comics. I would love to see them let the team play in the larger DC universe. Maybe move them outside of Gotham for a little while and see what kind of good they can do, maybe worldwide or something. I think there's a really cool opportunity to expand the importance of that team and maybe start to do something, Greg, that you and I have talked about a lot, where you take members of the Bat family and truly seek to elevate them to being on the same level as the Justice League. I mean, if Nightwing started working closer with the team and kind of have the team become just a much more integral part of the DCU as a whole, I think that would be a really cool thing to do.
I would love to see a Deathstroke detective. I know you're not reading Deathstroke, but I think those of us that are, how great would a Deathstroke detective crossover be right now?
Right.
It would be freaking fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of potential in that.
So, Russell, what's the one change you would like to see moving forward in the Bat family?
New creative team on Batgirl. That'd be nice. Specifically, I actually have a team in mind. I would like, not an artist per se, but I would really like it if the Benson sisters, who are currently writing Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, would take that book over too. Just do both. They have a much more consistent voice for Barbara and something that's far more enjoyable. So I would love to have them take it over. I like the idea of Detective moving the team out of Gotham and trying something different there. And I would take it one step further and say remove Batman from the book completely and have it be a Tim Drake-led team when he inevitably comes back.
I think that could absolutely work. I mean, I think it's cool, the idea of having Batman almost as like an ancillary character, just popping in occasionally, maybe to do assignments or something. But yeah. I agree with you, Russell. I think that's a great idea.
And if you were going to make that team work and really elevate those characters, I think you have to have Batman as a pure background character.
And it would set up a great moment, much like Legends of Tomorrow did recently with Rip Hunter, where Batman would be in the Rip Hunter role, perhaps, where he shows up finally, only to realize that he's really not needed anymore.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and it would be great to see Tim Drake finally take that next step in his evolution. Because he needs that. I think he's at that point now. And having Batwoman there, I mean, she's already globetrotting in her series, which has actually taken, funnily enough, concepts from Night of the Monster Man and turned them into something that doesn't outrageously suck. Yes. It works so much better in her book. So it's like, wow, Steve Orlando comes along with this really shitty concept, and then James Tynion and Marguerite Bennett get together and say, we got an idea. We can make this not so terrible. But yeah, the new Batgirl creative team, and then I like the idea of moving Detective out. Not so much Nightwing being more involved necessarily with the team, because I just really like what they've got going on with him over in Titans. But I don't want, unlike Batman, I'm tired of the characters being spread so thin. Like, there's just, he's that one character that seems to pop up in so many damn books. It's got to the point where he is in danger of like real overexposure, and like my disbelief just not being able to be suspended any further that he can do all of this. So
two Justice Leagues, his own team in Gotham, 3 books of his own.
Yeah,
He's got
it's
a lot
like
going on right now.
when he can't sleep, there's no possible way he has time for sleep. It just does not happen. Never. He does not sleep. So I'm like, it's time to dial back Batman and, you know, realize that it's great that he's so popular, but maybe let's start to de-emphasize him just a little. The character will survive.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, speaking of things that don't suck, let's move over to the Superman family.
Oh, yes.
Oldest and many would say greatest of the superheroes. I would argue that no character's line of books has enjoyed more overhaul than the Superman books in Rebirth. A lot of sweeping changes, most notably the kind of reinsertion of the pre-New 52 Superman back as the main Superman on Earth Prime, if we call it that, or Earth 1, whatever they're calling it. It's been interesting to see all these changes across the board in the Superman family. And for our purposes, the Superman family includes Action Comics, Superman, New Superman, Superwoman, Supergirl, Trinity, and the recently launched Super Sons, which I have not yet had a chance to read, although I'm pulling it. What books out of these benefited the most from Rebirth? Nick?
Well, it's hard for me to say, quite frankly, because, I wasn't... We've talked about Greg before on our show that I am not a longtime Superman fan. I was one of those people who always found the character a little cheesy, a little boring, and it took me a long time to really get into the character. Jeff Johns interested me during the New 52 run just because it was Jeff Johns, and I was going to read anything and everything he wrote. Kind of the same deal when they did Superman Unchained with Scott Snyder and Jim Lee. Jumped on that because of the creative team. Wound up enjoying, both of those. So I would say, for me personally, I can only comment on the books I've read, which would be Action Comics, Superman, Trinity, and Super Sons, and I'd say they've all benefited because I'm enjoying them, whereas I wasn't really enjoying any Superman comics before.
Excellent point. Let's move over to Jennifer. Obviously, this is a difficult question for you because you weren't reading before Rebirth, but let's just say, well, you know what, Jennifer? Let's come back to you for some of these later questions because I want you to talk about your highlights and lowlights in a minute.
Nobody puts baby in a corner, Greg.
Oh, shit.
I'm just kidding.
No.
No,
Hey,
go for it.
Any reference to Dirty Dancing is good for me. I'm probably the only dude on this panel that loves Dirty Dancing as a movie, so I'll own it. Hell with it. Anyway, let's move over to Russell. What books in the Superman line do you think benefited the most from Rebirth?
Well, I think it's also important to note that 4 of these books in this line didn't exist before Rebirth.
Right.
That would be New Superman, Superwoman, Trinity, and Super Sons. But I was reading both Action and Superman pretty much, well, just about every issue of both of those books in the New 52. And I think it's hands down Superman benefited the most because that was a book that kind of like Detective Comics in the New 52 struggled to find a voice. It just could not figure out who or what it was. And that, you could put that on editorial, you could put that on any number of people for that, for whatever reason. But it was actually worse than what Detective was doing in the New 52, where Detective was bland. Superman at times was just straight bad. And when there was a time when Scott Lobdell took over writing the book, and it went from bland to just straight into the trash. It was just a garbage book. And it never, it recovered a bit when Jeff Johns and John Romita Jr. finally took the book over, but then they handed it off to Gene Yang, who, in fairness, is a good writer, but as soon as he takes the book, it's like immediate crossover, and that's just to me, that has never benefited a new writer, especially one who's never written a character before, has, no real superhero experience to speak of, and he's coming on to write Superman, and it's like, okay, you're, just going to throw him right under the bus, aren't you? And the book did not benefit from it. It was just bad. But in Rebirth, with Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason on this book, they turned Superman into a family man, which is the step I guess most Superman fans never knew they always wanted, because it has worked. It has worked beautifully. And the team of Tomasi and Gleason, if they've shown us anything, it's that they know how to write that father-son dynamic. They get it. You read their Batman and Robin run from the New 52, that is a book that does not have enough praise thrown its way, so let me do it right now. Batman and Robin by Patrick Gleason and Peter Tomasi should be on everyone's reading list. It is tremendous stuff, even for you Damian haters out there. Todd. And I'm done.
Todd. And pretty much every guy over 40 who reads comics is doing that, so. Man or woman. So, yeah.
I do not get these people who hate Damien. It just does not make sense to me.
We're the same generation of people who brought back Hal Jordan. So, show some respect, son.
That's true. You take the good, you take the bad.
I'm just kidding, Russ.
I'm not disrespecting. I'm just saying I don't get it.
And there you have the facts of life.
And my Hal Jordan fandom is strong.
I just think I think it's and it goes, and this is going to go into a conversation about Jonathan Kent too, who I actually like as a character, but to me there was nothing wrong with Tim Drake as Robin and just having that and bringing in a Batman son. I mean, yes, it's a story you haven't told before, but so. We'll get to it, I guess, with the Jonathan Kent thing, because that's coming up.
Very good. Well, actually, speaking of which books have benefited the most in the Superman family? Todd.
Both Superman and Action have benefited quite a bit. I'll say Super Dad maybe a little bit more, just because, like Russell said, the New 52 iteration was very inconsistent, where the first couple arcs were what's going on, artist changes, and it was kind of indecipherable, incomprehensible, and plus you had a different thing going on in Action Comics. They were telling a whole different story with an earlier version of the character. So if you're just going book to book, Superman, which I call Super Dad, like Russell said, it's the Superman is a dad story you never know you wanted, but it really works. It's absolutely nailing that character. You also see his relationship with Lois. And, I guess it's convoluted to have these old universe characters in the new universe, but it works for me. And at least until we got to the last couple issues where they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and I know we'll talk about that too. But as a tie, I'd say Action and Superman have been restored to very, very prominent places in the line, and they're the cream of the crop as far as the Superman family of books.
Yeah, I did a cop-out, and I just wrote all for this. And the reason that I say that is I have made no bones about the fact that I did not like the New 52 Superman, the character, I mean. I didn't like what was done to the character. I didn't like the changes that were made. I didn't like the way that it seemed that DC felt that they needed to try and make Superman quote-unquote cool. I didn't like that. I didn't think he needed to be angsty. I didn't think they needed to split Lois and Clark and make them, friends at best. And I just didn't like almost any of the continuity changes that they made to the character. So bringing back for me, and everybody's going to have their own, quote, real Superman. For me, the real Superman is that John Byrne through Flashpoint Superman. So to bring him back and kind of remind people, in my opinion, of why Superman is a necessary character in action, in Superman, and across the line, was just brilliant. And it's worked because I haven't been this passionate of the character of Superman probably since I was a kid. And that this has really reminded me of why Superman was my favorite hero when I was young. And so that's been a big thing. And I know you may disagree, Todd, but for me, Jonathan Kent has been a godsend. He is much like Damian grew on me over time. On the other end of that spectrum, Jonathan's a character that I loved from the first minute I saw him, because it's a story that I always thought that I would like to see when I was a kid, of one day Superman, how does Superman deal with being Superman and trying to have a family, like an actual family, not just an entire family, and not just the husband and wife dynamic, but to have kids as well. And Jonathan, to me, has been so fun to read, the way that they've almost given him a hybrid personality between Clark and Lois. All the things I love about Lois, but all of the things that I love about Clark thrown in. The fact that he's just a good person, a good kid, but he's going to get in trouble constantly because he can't resist it, just like Lois. So I took a cop out and said all of the books have benefited. Now, are you more or less interested in Superman family of titles than you were before Rebirth started? In the interest of quickness here, Nick, I know your answer because you weren't reading any Superman books before Rebirth.
You can't quantify. You can't quantify a percentage increase from zero. So infinitely more would be the answer.
Right, and the same for you, Jennifer.
Yes.
And I'll go ahead and spoil it for everybody. I am much more interested. Russell and Todd, I'll start with Russell. What more or less interested in the Superman books than before Rebirth?
I'm buying every single one of them, and have not one of them is in danger of being dropped by me. So yeah, way more.
Outstanding. Todd?
Certainly more. Action and Superman especially. Well, those are the only two books I'm getting from this family, but they're near the top of my pile. So yeah, definitely more. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm getting Action, Superman, and Super Sons, it looks like. Nick, what about you?
I said earlier I'm getting Action, Superman, Trinity, and Super Sons.
Gotcha. Jennifer,
Although
which ones
I'm probably going to shift to trade-waiting Trinity here pretty soon.
Gotcha. Which ones are you getting, Jennifer?
The only ones I'm pulling are Trinity and Super Sons, but I read the first volume of Superman, Son of Superman.
Awesome. That's a great transition, because that is actually my pick for the highlight of Rebirth in the Superman family. That is the first arc of Superman, Son of Superman. That kind of what didn't introduce us to Jonathan Kent, but it introduced us to the new status quo of the fact that this Superman does have a son and that he has powers, and the kind of transition of him becoming Superboy. And I think that this is Superman at its best. It's inspirational. It's full of hope. It's full of optimism, and yet it's entertaining. And there are stakes, and there's drama, and there's danger. And the artwork from Pat. I think we've said this before on our show, and I think Russell said it on his as well. But nobody draws kids like Patrick Gleason. I don't know what it is, but between the way he draws Damian, the way he draws John, he just has a way of drawing kids that look like kids, and that look like excited kids, or scared kids, or angry kids, or what have you. And that's passed on to the other artists on the book. That it's a book that is consistently well drawn in that respect. So for me, Son of Superman was the highlight.
And I believe it was Gleason that designed the look. Maybe it was, I don't know if he designed the look for Jonathan or not, but certainly his take on the character, making him a little bit taller than Damian and certainly skinnier, that is actually carried over to every other artist interpretation of the character. And it's one of those things where, you're kind of worried that, like Superman and Batman are handled by some artists, they have a tendency to look a little bit the same when they're in their civilian garb. Mm-hmm. That is not a problem with John and Damian. They have actually been established very well by every artist I've seen take them on, and I think that's largely thanks to Patrick Gleason's take.
I would have to agree with you on that. Jennifer, what's your pick for the highlight of Rebirth in the Superman line?
My highlight would be Super Sons. And I'm going to say, because I love Damian, that's one of the main reasons. his insults and snide comments and shots just make my day. I don't know what it is. Even though he's being really mean to Jonathan, Jonathan gives it back to him. You know, he doesn't take any of Damien's shit. And it's joyful to read that book. I love it so much. It's gorgeous. The colors are gorgeous. I can't. I'm so excited about that book. I want my son to read that book. That is my goal, is to get him to read it.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be awesome. I think that he would probably enjoy. I'm really looking forward to reading it. It's sitting in my pile right now. I've had the first 2 issues, so looking forward to reading that one for sure. It's been one. Everybody knows that it's been one of my most anticipated books ever since it was announced. Todd, what for you has been the highlight of the Superman family in Rebirth?
I've enjoyed the whole run. I will say that although a lot of people weren't nuts about it, I think the Dinosaur Island story was maybe a little bit of a favorite for mine, and just because it was straight out of the New Frontier, and it was a tribute to Darwin Cook, who we lost all too soon. So I like that, and I also, I like I said, I'm not nuts about Superman. How do I say this? I like that they're using the way they're using these stories to show you an aspect of Superman's character, and as a father, I mean, he definitely adds weight and adds dimension to him, to Clark. So even though I can't change it, I still enjoy the way they're writing him, and I think that particular story was a nice father-son bit.
Yeah, very good. I like that story too, actually. Let's move on to Russell. What's been the highlight of Rebirth in the Superman family for you?
I think it's hands down. I'm going to agree with you, Greg, that first arc on Superman, that was just tremendous. That was everything I want in a Superman story and more. But I am glad that Todd mentioned Dinosaur Island, because that one hit for me too, because I'm a big Darwin Cook fan, and I absolutely love the New Frontier. And seeing Peter Tomasi and Doug Mackey pay tribute to Darwin was that was a really touching thing. Like it was an action-packed story. It was, very adventure-based, but just for what it was, it kind of tugged on the heartstrings, because I understood the references that they were making. And Darwin was one of my absolute favorites in comics. But, the main Superman title, just by and large, has been the absolute joy of my comic book reading experience for the last nearly a year now. So I can't gush enough about that book. But Super Sons is going to nip its heels pretty soon, I think. I mean, it's only 2 issues in, and like Jenny said, it is a tremendous book, and I'll go one further. They could animate that right now, take it straight off the page and turn it into a cartoon series. They wouldn't have to change a damn thing. It works. It would be so good on Cartoon Network, and hopefully it wouldn't be canceled after one season like, all of their other really good shows.
Like everything else.
Yeah, like every other great show they have. But it is tailor-made for an animated series, and if you see Warner Brothers don't option that at some point, then someone over there needs to be fired.
Yeah, I agree. That would be a really fun cartoon for sure, and it would kind of I think a niche as well. Nick, your pick for the highlight of the Superman family thus far in DC Rebirth.
So you guys have pretty much, have very well covered the opening arc of Superman, the introduction of John Kent. So I won't go back over there. Instead, I'll pick out a couple of moments in particular. And one of the things I've loved about Rebirth as a whole is it's not been afraid at times to take a few meta pot shots at some of the more lame elements of the New 52. And there were a couple of moments in Action Comics and Trinity. I don't remember the exact issues where they pretty much, talk about indirectly how stupid the Superman and Wonder Woman relationship was, with Wonder Woman actually saying to Lois at one point, something about you and him, it just feels right. And then another moment in Trinity #1 where they're kind of at the dinner table and Wonder Woman talked about how awkward it was, and It's kind of just these two moments that just say, all right, that was a thing that happened, but let's just try to forget it and move on. And those were the two moments that I'll point out.
Yeah, that scene at the dinner table in Trinity, by the way, if I had to pick out one scene as a highlight in Rebirth, that might be the one for me. I think I remember telling you that on the phone, not on our podcast even, that was probably one of my favorite scenes in a comic in a long time.
Right.
That was just a perfect scene. So now, low light in the Superman family to this point. Jennifer, let's start with you on this one. If you had to pick a low light, what would it be?
Well, for me, I read maybe 3 issues of Superwoman, and I thought I was going to like it, but I did not. I think it was very wordy. Maybe the art could have spoken for itself instead of all the talky, and eventually it just,
You better never read a Kevin Smith comic.
Oh, no. Well, I'm partial to Kevin Smith, but it just, it would always be on the last, that's how I read the 3 issues, because on the last page I would be like, oh, well, that's cool. Okay, I'll get the next one. And so that once that kind of wore off, I was like, all right, I'm kind of done with this.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't actually read that one yet, but that's interesting. Yeah, I've heard it's very wordy, which is interesting. Given the fact that it's written by an artist, you would think it would be more visual in nature. So let's go over to Russell. Your pick for the low light thus far in the Superman family tree.
Well, I guess by default it would be the only book in the Superman line I'm not pulling, and that would be New Superman. And I did read the initial Rebirth, or not the Rebirth, but the New Superman #1. It was one of the few that didn't actually have a Rebirth one-shot. And
call it a birth one-shot.
Yeah, it was a birthing. It wasn't bad. It was certainly more enjoyable than Batgirl Rebirth, but it didn't grab me. It didn't. I felt like it just didn't have anything for me. I didn't relate to the lead character. I didn't find anything to really enjoy there, so it just it didn't stick with me. And I will echo some of Jenny's criticisms of Superwoman, though. Phil Jimenez, love him as an artist, but he has a tendency to be a bit on the verbose side, and that is a habit he has had his entire career, and nothing changed. And I don't understand it sometimes. He was writing and drawing the book for a good while, and I mean he would take breaks every once in a while because his art can get a bit detailed, but he covers up most of it with word balloons, so does it really matter? But yeah, Superwoman has an intriguing premise that drew itself out a little too much. I think if they had taken a more compressed storytelling approach to that book, it would have worked so much better. And I think we're coming up on that book's cancellation. Actually, I don't think it makes it past July. I really feel like we're gonna see that one come to an end, and I think if I had to guess, New Superman is probably not far behind.
I've got an idea about that, Russell, which will tie into our next question in just a moment. But I'm going to piggyback on what you said. My pick was also New Superman #1. Read it. It was not the worst issue in the world. It wasn't bad even. I wouldn't even say it was a bad comic. It was just not, like you said, not for me. There was not really a hook in there. There was an attempt at a hook at the end, and it was one of those things where it's like, okay, it's a cliffhanger where I don't care if the guy falls off the cliff.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm like, you know what? I can just, if Stallone, you're reaching your hand out to me, but you know what? I'm just going to let it go. And in this case, I was not a stupid bastard, and I didn't keep buying the book. So, that being said, I've heard some people really like that book, but again, just not for me. Nick, your pick that rhymes. I like that. I'm going to keep that. Nick, your pick for the low light of Rebirth.
So I've really enjoyed, certain aspects of the main Superman title. Obviously, the opening story arc, I enjoyed Reborn fairly well. But one thing that I thought, especially having now finished Reborn, it seems like they had the opening story arc in mind and they had Reborn in mind. And in my opinion, I think some of the stuff that has been done in the in-between time was just kind of filler. Like, I thought Dinosaur Island, while I understand it was a Darwin Cook homage, didn't exactly set my world on fire. The Frankenstein storyline, kind of the same thing. And the multiversity or multiplicity or whatever they called it storyline was kind of the same thing. So it was like, even though I was still liking the book well enough, it felt like a pretty extended period of just downtime, so to speak. And that was something that kind of irked me. And that's really the only thing I can say, seeing as how I wasn't reading that many of the Superman books.
Gotcha. Todd, let's go over to you. Your pick for the low light in the Clark Superman family of doom.
I will go ahead and say the reveal of who the other Clark Kent was ultimately my. And are we spoiling anything, Greg? If we go there,
Greg knows.
I know. I peeked. I couldn't resist. So I know everything now. I know all.
And then the way that
I don't know how much we want to. Do we want to, Nick? Do we want to split for those?
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Because we haven't really talked about it yet. So it's a good opportunity to talk about it.
Right.
It's the only time I've ever liked that particular character and the way they've handled him in comics was whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, the Alan Moore Superman story that wrapped up the pre-Crisis Superman from 1985, where he was revealed to be totally malevolent and just satanic. Nick, can you pronounce it for me one time, please?
Who, me?
Yes, please.
Mixel
Petickle.
Mixelpidalic is what I'm going with.
Mixel. I'll go with that too. Mixelpidalic as.
Although I like Mixelpetickle a little bit better. That sounds kind of sexy.
Break the mixel.
I think later tonight I'll think about Mixelpetickle and think about that dude from Supergirl and just kind of, some private time.
In Super Friends,
that could be featured on our SPANK IT podcast we were talking about earlier.
Sounds like this one's heading there now.
Dan Jurgens.
Yeah.
This sort of thing is his bag, baby.
All right, Todd, carry on with your point, sir.
Just bringing that particular character in to, I don't know, almost like a MacGuffin, almost like this outside force that is serving a greater purpose or is serving more of an editorial purpose to shape the storyline. And then the ultimate reveal of In Action Comics 976, where can we go there, or is that too fresh, Nick?
I'm fine with it personally, but Greg and I differ on the process of spoilers typically.
Yeah.
I would rather not spoil that one. I think that's too recent. But I think we can allude to it at the very least.
For him to be the catalyst for what's going on in the most recent issues and the conclusion of Superman Reborn, it is kind of a cop out to me. Not a Earth Prime, Superboy Prime punching Jason Todd back into existence type cop out, but still a cop out nonetheless. And yes, there's other things going on with whoever it is that Mixelpick, which I'll pronounce it Mixelpick because that's how they pronounce it on Super Friends. Anyway, using him to move these events forward is just kind of, I don't know, rubs me wrong, but he does allude to somebody else watching him. So if that's Dr. Manhattan or whomever, that would be kind of cool, I think.
Yeah. Right. Well, this is a great transition that we actually brought this up because the next question is, what change would you like to see made in the Superman family moving forward? And we've just alluded to this latest issue of Action Comics, and while the Mixelpidalic reveal may not have worked for everyone, I personally don't have a huge issue with it because I actually kind of like using him in that way, because he's one of the more interesting or unique Superman villains. Like, I don't think that any, other than Batmite, I guess, I don't think anybody else in comics really has a villain like him. And that can be for better or worse, but I like kind of utilizing him in this way only because, to me, the ends justify the means. And the end of this was basically the alleviation, and again, I'm not going to spoil it, the alleviation of every single concern that I've had over the last 6 to 8 months about what was going to happen in Superman Reborn. All of them got thrown out the window. I am completely satisfied with the new status quo. I'm happy, and I'll leave it at that. But so the answer to the question of what would I change in the Superman family, it's already happened. I already got the change that I wanted. It's done, and a certain thing has been consolidated, and the bad things have been scrubbed from existence, we'll say. But since I can't with nothing, I'm going to say the return of Superboy Prime as a major Superman villain, which should have happened 10 years ago, never happened for some reason. He should be, in my opinion, a new A1 Superman villain. And there's even a ready-made story that I've written in my mind, again, 10 years ago, that I'm going to beat into the ground. And they should just they should just do it.
Well timed.
And I want Superboy Prime back. I want him now. Nick,
just to jump in right there, everything that Greg just said. I mean, no reason to keep that character continually sidelined. No reason not to make him it's so weird that around the same time we could have had, in my opinion, the next great Batman villain in Jason Todd and the next great Superman villain in Superman Prime, and we got neither. And I think that's a big mistake from back around the Infinite Crisis era. So I'll echo everything Greg just said.
Awesome. Russell?
Since so many things just happened at the end of Superman Reborn, can I have the Kents back, please?
Yes! I love it.
Can I have Jonathan and Martha Kent? Because I really feel like John could benefit from some grandparents. And it just...
If anything else, they'll give him some hard candy. Really hard candy, which is what it takes for Kryptonians.
It just seems, like the right time to do it. And it looks like they're headed that way in Superwoman, but I would like to see Lana Lang continue to be elevated in the way that Greg Pak was elevating her in Action Comics, but I don't feel like she needs superpowers for that. And I feel like that's actually kind of been a detriment to her character. So maybe put her back as a strong supporting character who's been written very intelligently, but uses her mind in the way that Superman uses his superpowers, and that's the way they were going with it. I felt like that was working pretty well, and kind of feel like we don't really necessarily need a new Superman, super-man running around. Man. And only other thing I can think of is echoing everything that Greg said about Superboy Prime. Was kind of hoping that he was going to be, the reveal, but I do lean more towards what Greg said about Mixius Pidlick, who turned out to be the other Clark. I was a little at the reveal at first, but that backup story, I think it worked on me in the same way it did on you, Nick. It elevated that in a way in my mind, and then what Greg said about him being used.
It was the spoonful of sugar that helped the medicine go down, so to speak.
Indeed it did. And what Greg said about the final chapter of Reborn, I was like, you know what? I honestly, looking at it, I don't see how you get there any other way. I don't think that, having it be revealed as Superboy Prime, you don't get there. You don't get to this point.
No.
Using any other character. So it had to be this whenever you really map it all out. And yes, Superboy Prime does need to come back, and I'll say just thinking back to something that the last words that Pandora said before she died in the Rebirth special, that she was accusing her killer of being cold and, well, not cold but heartless, but being like someone who believes in hate and all the dirty, gritty things that the New 52 seem to be made up of to some people. And that set my mind to being could it be Superboy Prime instead of Dr. Manhattan that we're dealing with? Could he have?
I don't think so, personally.
I don't. Yeah, not necessarily, no. But it was just something that occurred to me because I've never thought of Dr. Manhattan as what she described him as. Just I've always thought of him as cold, disconnected, and distant.
Yeah, above it all. Yeah.
So that has bothered me since I read Rebirth, and we were all assuming that it's Dr. Manhattan. And I'm sure he's involved in some way, but I'm wondering if there's something else to this. And some people think that Mr. Oz is Superboy Prime or Superman Prime, and to me that feels like a bigger stretch.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't feel like that to me. But yeah, that's my very long answer.
Very good. I'll mention one other change. I would also, but I'll pay it off later in the show during our lightning round. But I would cancel Superwoman and replace it with something else that I'll mention later on. Todd, one change that you'd like to see going forward in the Superman line?
Bring back the mullet.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know. I think my favorite Superman is kind of like Greg, the post-crisis, but when they had the interconnected 4 titles.
Yeah, the triangle numbers.
The Shield, yeah, the triangle numbers, where every issue was so tightly script or connected to the next issue of the next weekly comic that was not necessarily the same title. Superman went to Action, which went to Adventures of Superman, which went to Superman
Man of Steel.
Man of Steel, and then on the 5th week you'd have Man of Tomorrow. I mean, you had Mike Carlin, who was the editor.
Mike Carlin.
I
was just trying to think, Todd, of who was the editor back then, but yeah, that's him, Mike Carlin.
Coordinating everything, and I love that Dan Jurgens is involved in Action because it is a connection to that, and yeah, it's the same Superman we're dealing with. So I would say maybe just a little bit more, maybe even a 3rd monthly title, but then you would give up, your two every 2 weeks of each comic. So I think that's kind of what I would want. I would maybe want a 5th week event where you'd have a quarterly Superman that would tie into that, maybe something like that.
Not a bad idea. I would dig that. Like a quarter. I like the quarterly idea because you really don't see that a whole heck of a lot these days. You get annuals, but yeah, I like that. Jennifer, are there any changes that you would like to see in the Superman family moving forward?
Quite frankly, it's not for me to say on Superman, but I'll just throw this out there. I'm curious what they're going to do with villains for Super Sons. Who are they going to have the boys fighting against? In that second issue, John is kind of like real happy to kind of defeat the schoolyard bully, and then Damian is just obviously next level, and then takes him on an adventure that is a lot harder than that. So I'm just wondering, who are they going to fight in these books?
Interesting. What I hope doesn't happen is I hope they don't fight like a bunch of newly created supervillain sons. That wouldn't be as cool in my opinion. I don't want to see like Lex Luthor the Third at this point, because we had Lex Luthor Jr. in the 90s. I don't know. A Lex Luthor son, I don't need to see that, but seems like younger characters, sure, but
seems like a good place for some C and D lister Superman villains, and for some C and D lister Batman villains to show up,
sure,
and maybe get a little more elevation. I would also say that after Superman Reborn, Mxyzptlk has kind of established himself as a potential foil, like a real villain for John, and could see him.
Oh, and imagine Damian interacting with the character that's silly.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That seems like a story that could practically write itself. I'm
telling you, if we're delving into Batman C and D list villains, though, there's only one choice, and that's Amygdala. Got to be Amygdala. and of course Benedict Asp, who no one else remembers. And with that, folks, Film Freak, the Cavalier. I mean, there's plenty of them.
But let's just hope it's not the '90s Toyman who shows up.
Which is nothing like the Silver Age Toyman who I used to work for.
No, this is a Cat Grant special. The '90s Toyman. Let's just leave it at
was that the father of her son?
Well, no, I don't think it was, but let's just say it was a very special issue of Superman. Much like there was a very special episode of Mr. Belvedere, and different strokes.
Very good. Well, with that being said, folks, we're going to take a much needed halftime break here.
Are we? Are we though?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And when we come back from the other side, at least one of us on this panel will have urinated, and then we'll have all the rest of your DC Rebirth lineup counted down and gone through. Stay with us, won't you?
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey, pro wrestling announcer Kevin Kelly here. I want to make sure you are all subscribed to all the great feeds here at Place to Be Nation. It's really easy to do. Just head to iTunes or your preferred podcatcher app today and search and subscribe to the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, which, of course, includes the full archives of the Kevin Kelly Show, the Place to Be Nation pod feed, and the Pro Wrestling Only feed. Subscribe, listen, and then rate us and leave feedback today. And be sure to give Justin your true thoughts. I mean, don't hold back. After all, he is kind of a jerk. Just listen to Scott.
Place to Be Nation's JT Rosero here, and I want to let you know that we have a ton of great podcasts available to you on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlayStation.com, and we now offer them to you on two great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, you can check out Scott Criscolo and me on the Mothership, the Place to Be podcast, with our famous Vintage Vault pay-per-view reviews. PTBN also covers current-day wrestling with Clotheslines and Headlines, Main Event, Lucha Afterground, and our monthly pay-per-view reaction shows. And we live wrestling's past with our monthly pay-per-view rewind series led by Ben Morse, the Our Vantage Point podcast, which features a potpourri-style look at wrestling history, and Survey Says, a fun look back at the good, bad, and ugly of WCW. And on our very popular Place to Be Nation Pop podcast feed, we offer such great shows as the Glenn Butler Podcast Hour Spectacular, Rank and File, PTBN Dadcast, NBA Team, and Lucha Undead, as well as a veritable podcast heaven for comics fans with Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Sellers Points, Todd Weber's Conversations, Geek and Sassy, and the Imaginary Stories. You can find all these current shows plus archives of our past podcasts, including The Kevin Kelly Show, as well by subscribing to both feeds on iTunes. And while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All these shows, plus others available at PlayStation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus tournaments, and more. Be sure to support our site by using PlayStation.com/Amazon when doing your online shopping, and download our free PTB Vintage Vault Refresh ebooks via the links on our site. We also want to thank our friends at Bonehead's Wing Bar in West Warwick, Rhode Island, and Fall River, Massachusetts, thehistoryofwrestling.com, and Scott Keith's blog of Doom. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Pro Wrestling Only Podcast Network. Subscribe on iTunes or on Android with your favorite podcast app. Established in 2013, the Pro Wrestling Only Podcast Network is committed to providing unique takes on the rich and diverse medium of professional wrestling, focusing on its history and global impact, but also exploring the vibrant contemporary scene. The roll call includes Space City, an NWA on-demand podcast. This Week in Wrestling. Stacey and Elliott's Bogus Journey, the Super Apuestas podcast, the Military Industrial Suplex, Strong Style History, Puro Puri, and Psychology is Dead. Also, from the archives, the full catalog of great shows that provided a fresh look at classic wrestling, including Where the Big Boys Play, Titans of Wrestling, Tag Teams Back Again, Letters from Kayfabe, Wrestling Culture, Pro Wrestling Super Show, Goodwill Wrestling, and many, many others. Pro Wrestling Only Podcast Network. Only the best.
Comics fans, voice of Ring of Honor's Kevin Kelly here. You're listening to the Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
All right, who's going to try to do Parv? Somebody give it a shot. I want to hear it now.
Hello, this is Tom.
Parv sounds like Slade Wilson at the top.
He does sound like Slade, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Hello, kid. Anyway, we are the Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
Hey, Justin Rosero here.
Bonehead Bar.
Listen to Todd Weber's conversation.
We are joined by Todd Weber, Jennifer Smith, and Russell Sellers, and we are talking all about DC Rebirth. And it was brought to my attention by my illustrious cohort before the break. I never gave him a chance to suggest what changes he'd like to see in the Superman line, and he informed me during the break that there were none. So let us move along.
Greg, let me ask you, what changes are there that Nick Duke would like to see in the Superman line? Let me answer that for you. There are none.
Nick.
Just made the list.
It did just make the list.
You're nothing but a Kitzel skim, Nick.
Oh, a Kitzel skim. I like that. That sounds dirty.
Nick's just vanished.
Lord Almighty.
What's happening right now?
You've been mixed.
Do we have to explain that one to anybody?
No, I got it. I don't think Nick got it.
No.
Nick's off in La La Land, but understandably so, because we're about to talk about T-books. How's that for a transition?
Well,
the team books in the DC line saw some massive overhauls, both creatively and the creation of some new titles that did not exist in the New 52. So, for our purposes, the team books that we're going to be talking about, not teen as in teenagers, but team as in we are teammates, I suppose, are Red Hood and the Outlaws, Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, Justice League, Titans, Teen Titans, Justice League of America, and Suicide Squad. So, to kick things off, let's start over on the West Coast with Todd Weber. Todd, what book benefited the most from Rebirth out of these books?
Wow. I'm going to go ahead and say Titans, just because there was the little Titans hunt that happened in the New 52, and though it thematically led into Rebirth, it was not of the caliber that we're seeing in the current Titans book. So I will say Titans has benefited the most.
I like that pick a lot. Jennifer, which of these books would you say... I'm sorry, I didn't ask you, Todd. Which ones of these books are you actually reading?
Titans and Justice League of America, but the latter two may get canceled here in a soon-to-come purge.
Gotcha. Jennifer, which of the team books are you reading right now?
I'm reading Titans and Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, although I did just drop it.
Oh, wow. Which books benefited the most from Rebirth? And again, it's hard. I know it's kind of a weird question for you because you weren't reading.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to say Titans, too, just because that's the one I like the most.
Gotcha. Yeah, understandable. I think it's, my opinion, it's the best of the grouping. The book that I think benefited the most is, even though it's a book that I actually have only read one issue of, and I didn't love the issue, I just kind of liked it, okay, but I'm going to go with Teen Titans because people just don't understand how bad Teen Titans was in the New 52.
Yeah. Like,
I if you haven't read it, you don't know how bad it was. It was bad. It was like freaking Nate Gray X-Man bad, and that's a lot coming from me, given how much I hate that character. It was the worst. It was just awful, irredeemably bad at times. So the fact that Teen Titans managed to be a decent first issue was already a massive improvement over anything that I read in the New 52 or DCU eras of Teen Titans. So that's my pick for the book that benefited the most. Russell, in your view, which book or books benefited the most from Rebirth?
Well, I agree with everything you said, Greg. Red Hood and the Outlaws was worse. And that book is
pretty good.
The most remarkable turnaround in all of Rebirth. And I say that, I don't say that with any any hyperbole whatsoever, because everybody knows how much I have hated on Scott Lobdell over the past 5-6 years. That's no secret. But he has served me a nice plate of crow, and I have been enjoying it, because he and Dexter Soy together on Red Hood and the Outlaws currently is one of the single most enjoyable books I pick up every month. I absolutely love what he's doing on that book, and Dexter Soy is probably the most underrated artist that's in DC right now. That guy is a freaking superstar. He's got my attention in the same way that Jason Fabok got my attention whenever he had his Detective Comics run. I am absolutely loving what he's doing on that book, and the way that Jason Todd is being utilized. The use of Bizarro even has really worked for me. Just looking at the lineup coming into the book, it was one of those books that, as I was looking at all the stuff coming into Rebirth, I was like, this is probably what I'm going to skip. I don't see any reason for me to pick it up whatsoever. But then I saw that preview of Red Hood and the Outlaws Rebirth #1, and it was all Jason Todd, all centered on him and building up his story. So I was like, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. And I was hooked. It just grabbed me immediately, and it has not let go yet. So, yeah, from a book that I absolutely despised in the New 52 to one of my top, probably close to my top 5 in Rebirth, Red Hood and the Outlaws, biggest turnaround.
Never thought I'd hear the day, but
neither did I.
I haven't read much of it, but I've read a couple issues of Red Hood and the Outlaws, and they were actually pretty damn good, I have to say. So, moving on to Nick, your pick for the book or books that have benefited the most from DC Rebirth.
Well, to start, I'll say that I've at least read some of all of these, except for Red Hood and the Outlaws, because I don't care how good you and Russell say it is. I'm just not. You're not going to Lobdell me. You're not going to lure me into a false sense of security and then you have the rug pulled out from under me. It's not going to happen. So I'll take your word for it on that one, I guess. But the rest of them I've at least read some of. And I will say, you guys mentioned Titans and Teen Titans, and those are absolutely picks. So I'll throw a little love to Batgirl and the Birds of Prey. This was one that I picked up and had, negative expectations for. Less than zero in terms of expectations, and have been pleasantly surprised pretty much since the beginning. I've enjoyed it. Is it rewriting, the way comics are done or anything? Is it some groundbreaking story? No, but I think it's a pretty well done superhero comic, and I've enjoyed getting to see some classic Barbara and Black Canary interplay that I kind of missed. So that's the one I'm going to go with.
This is not the Spank It podcast, I would remind you, Nick.
Now, quite frankly, I'd suggest that Batwoman over there with Julia Pennyworth, that'd be but that's another another topic for another time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move on to, are you more or less interested in the team books across DC than you were before Rebirth? Let's stay with you, Nick.
I kind of have to say it's a little bit of a wash, because I was absolutely hooked on that Jeff Johns Justice League, and so I was, it was right up there with the Scott Snyder Batman for me during the New 52 era, and so I haven't, obviously there's things like that, and my disdain for the Justice League titles at this point has kind of, canceled out my enthusiasm for Titans, Teen Titans, and Birds of Prey. So I'll say it's kind of at this even keel, I suppose.
Gotcha. I agree. There's nothing as good as Jeff Johns' Justice League, but my interest is certainly slightly more in the team books than before Rebirth, because there's not the high of Justice League, but Titans is really good. Red Hood and the Outlaws, from what I've read, has been good. Batgirl and Birds of Prey has been pretty good from what I've read. Teen Titans has been decent. Suicide Squad's, it's all right, I guess. But I would say slightly more interested, because I'm more interested in a variety of books. Before Rebirth, the only team book I was interested in was Justice League, although it was, at a very, very high level. Russell, how does your interest in the team books compare to before Rebirth?
It's I guess it's kind of an even keel when you spread it out, because I'm buying more team books, but none of them have reached that Jeff Johns Justice League level hype, just like you guys were saying. Like, none of them hit that. But I will say Titans is my favorite of the team books, and it's a really enjoyable read every month. Teen Titans I'm also enjoying. Of course, I'm also on Red Hood and the Outlaws, and I'm on Batgirl and the Birds of Prey. I've enjoyed all of those. I think they're all good books. But, you know, I dropped Justice League right after the crossover with Suicide Squad. I also dropped Suicide Squad at the same time. And after this second issue of JLA, I've dropped it. So it's kind of shaken out to be the team books that I was not expecting to love have become the ones that I go to, and the ones that I really had high hopes for have utterly disappointed me on just about every level. So yeah, it's kind of a weird way. It's kind of a hard thing for me to judge, I guess. So I'll just say that I'm maybe about even whenever it all shakes out.
Gotcha.
You know, Greg Russell just mentioned high hopes. Do I hear a noise in the background?
There it is.
Guys, this happens once in a while. I know you guys aren't used to being on the podcast, but we have this machine, this large Silver Age-like machine in the background that prints out laser paper, and it's a ticker, actually, and it is the Ho-Ho Loon ticker. We don't know what it's going to tell us. Usually it tells us the same thing, oddly enough, but we don't know. It could say anything, so I'm gonna walk over here to the Hard-Traveling and see if I can rustle up a sheet of paper here. Oh, it's coming out here. Let's see here. All right, I'm looking at it right now. Mondale goes down. All right, and what's that? Let's go here. Phillies lost. Here we go. Ho-Ho Loon, still employed by World Wrestling Entertainment, ladies and gentlemen.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, we don't know who's sending this to us, but somebody is sending these updates to our ticker, and we feel the need to keep you out there in listener land informed of Ho-Ho Loon's employment status, which means that the Ho-Hopes of a nation survive for at least one more week.
Well done.
So with all that being said, Todd, are you more or less interested in the team books in DC Rebirth?
I am less interested, my friends, just because Justice League has been mediocre to terrible. Justice League of America has been mediocre to bad. And I understand Brian Hitch is not the world's greatest writer. What does he have on DC editorial that lets them continue to employ him? Is it the hope that he'll continue to do covers for them or something? Because the stories are crap, the characterizations are crap, the dialogue is shit.
Yeah.
It's why is this still a thing?
But he's got a great new idea for a new alien invasion against the
Yeah, I was going to say, how many more alien invasion storylines do we need to see? I enjoyed actually the.
Credit where it's due. He's branching out a little. Time travel, you know, that hasn't been done before, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you couldn't go. All you need to do is there's a ton of great writers on DC staff who could do a better job. Yeah. But then again, we thought that Steve Orlando would be writing a really good Justice League book, and I don't know if it's him particularly or if it's the roster of characters that are just weird. I really enjoyed the one-shots that led up to the Justice League of America, but yeah, after a Rebirth special and 2 issues, it's been meh. I know they want to have a Justice League book on shelves every week, and that's why there's Justice League and then Justice League of America on the off weeks. But so far, no bueno, bro.
I have a theory about Orlando. I think he's one of those writers that he's really great whenever he's focused in on a single character. Mm-hmm. Because Midnighter and Apollo and Midnighter was absolutely great. And he's really started to find a pretty strong footing with Supergirl. But then you put him in a team book, and he struggles. I mean, Night of the Monster Men was a pretty good example of how he struggled to pull that all together. And I would say his direct opposite is James Tynion IV, who struggles whenever he tries to write a solo character. But you put in a team dynamic, and he just shines.
Yeah,
well, Jeff Lemire is kind of the
I was about to bring up the Jeff Lemire example. Exactly, Greg. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, he's a guy that his solo books are, I would argue that nobody's written Wolverine or Green Arrow better than him in a decade plus. But when it comes to his team books, they just tend to kind of underwhelm a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting how that works. Or at least it's not as weird as Jeff Loeb, who is a genius when he works for DC and is the worst writer in the world when he works for Marvel. So very strange. But yeah, a lot of good points there, Todd. I agree with. I haven't read JLA yet, but it seems like the use for JLA on the ends was better when they did it in the New 52, when Jeff Johns had the JLA book where it was kind of like this covert government-sponsored Justice League that was kind of working almost in opposition to the regular Justice League. I thought it was kind of a cool concept, but this one seems to not be flying very well. So I think we've gotten through more or less interested. So let's move on to what has been the highlight of Rebirth in the team books. And for this one, I want to start with you, Jenny. What for you has been the highlight of these books?
Well, I read all of Titans again today, and I think it was kind of a moment in one of those issues I think just talked about recently a couple of weeks ago where Superman shows up and speaks to Wally. Mm-hmm. And, Wally, although he's found his team again, he still, he can't let go of Linda. And having Superman there to say, like, look, I know what you mean. And I'm telling you that, I can be here for you, and if you need somebody to talk to that just understands how you feel, then I'm always around. And I just thought it was a really sweet moment. I think Wally really needed it.
I agree. That was a great issue. And like you said, a wonderful moment that I wasn't really – I just kind of assumed that it would be a typical Superman Flash story where they have a race and they fight some mutual villain or something. And it was actually a lot cooler than that. So great pick there. Let's go over to Todd. What has been the highlight of the team book in Rebirth thus far?
I'm going to say Titans number 5, that one issue where Wally just can't be everywhere at once, where he's trying to save.
Yeah, that was a good one.
What was it, like 18 seconds? The entire issue takes place over the course of 18 seconds or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very heroic. I enjoyed that story quite a bit. And Titans is kind of my jam, just because it's characters that I grew up with, and there's still, a lot of DC, I think, editorial and staff are about my age, mid-40s, and so they have this legacy with the characters that they grew up with where they were teens, and now they're adults, and so there's a special fondness, and a good portion of the readership does too. But that particular issue where Wally had to do the impossible to be everywhere at the same time, and to save this person who doesn't even remember him, basically,
right?
It's tragic and heroic at the same time. Enjoyed that. I think that's been the peak of the entire team line to me. And Titans has in general been pretty strong, and I did like issue 7 as well, like Jenny did.
Yeah, that's another awesome pick, and I picked as my highlight Titans itself, the book. That has been very consistent, very good from the minute it started, and is really filling my team superhero wants right now. So I'm very much enjoying it. Like you said, Todd, these are the characters I grew up with. So to see Dick Grayson treated as a big deal, and Donna Troy to an extent, and Roy Harper, and especially Wally West, they've done such a good job, has Dan Abnett, of bringing Wally back into the fold and not doing what I was worried that they would do whenever they brought Wally back, which is kind of making it seem like he's not that big a deal. They've made it clear that he is a big deal, and they seem to have even implied that he has carried over his pre-Rebirth status as the fastest of the Flashes, which was always kind of his deal during the Mark Waid and Jeff Johns runs. So that's been really, really cool. So Titans is my pick. Nick, what, in your opinion, has been the highlight of Rebirth in this family?
Simply put, the first 7 issues of Titans because of Wally West, and I say the first 7 issues because fuck Bumblebee.
Ooh. Wow.
Gee.
Harsh.
No interest. Like,
And
eye-rollingly boring most of the time, in my opinion. And
once again, I'll remind you, this is not the all Spank It cast, not yet.
No, not the fun kind. Never mind. Let's
Russell, your pick for the highlight of Rebirth thus far in the team books.
I think it's going to be about a clean sweep here. Titans just gets everything right about a team dynamic book, and basically, to put it another way, it does everything right that Justice League and JLA do wrong, and it never skips out on giving each member of the team a moment to shine. Like, everybody gets their moment, even though the book is very Wally-centric. He's still, that primary focus of the book. Like, even if he's playing as a background character, you still, you're drawn to what's going on with him. But I've actually, I've been drawn to another aspect of the book that doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but I love this Arsenal and Donna Troy dynamic.
Yeah.
I'm loving the hell out of that. I'm like, I really enjoy these two together. This is a nice little pseudo-romantic thing that's going on. I love their flirtation, and boy, talk about a character who has finally been done right in this current continuity. Donna Troy finally got it, finally got to where she needed to be.
Hell, Arsenal for that matter. And
Arsenal, yes. Good on Dan Abnett for basically redeeming 2 characters in this current continuity and bringing back a really fantastic one. But another dynamic that he's added into the book that I didn't realize how much I missed until I saw it again, and that's Dick Grayson and Wally West together, having their banter back and forth, because these two are supposed to be like best friends. And they finally reminded us of that, and I don't know how I ever lived without it.
Titans are family.
Yeah.
This is I buy into them just being lifelong friends and family closer than their actual families. So I think it's kind of like what X-Men to be as far as the dynamics between them. You believe it. You buy into it. And in a way that even though they had a book post Marv Wolfman, I think this is the most I've bought in since the Wolfman era of the 80s.
Wow, that's high praise. That's really, really cool. Because you hit the nail on the head with that. That's a great point. And I think that's something that feeling of family is hard to create in this day and age, it seems, in team books. Because I don't know the last time I read it. Because even the great team books, like Justice League, was a great team book under Jeff Johns, but it never felt like they were family. It felt like they were friends that got along for the sake of the team. With Titans, they do really feel like family, and like in a way that the X-Men used to in the day, in opposition to the Avengers, which was again that Justice League kind of feel. So, very good point there. Now, what has been, and there have been some options to choose from in this department. What has been the low light of Rebirth thus far?
Oh boy.
I'm gonna start us out on this one with literally every issue of Justice League that I have read, which encompass 4 issues. I was not happy with the very first issue, and I'll go ahead and say something that had bothered me from get-go was the incredibly, and we already made fun of it once, but the incredibly repetitive, uninteresting, unoriginal alien invasion storyline that I love. Like, Brian Hitch is a hell of an artist, but the Authority, the Ultimates 2, everything that this guy has drawn has had an alien invasion in it, and it looks the same every time. It's weird, like spider-looking ships coming down from the sky, descending over London or descending over Manhattan or something, and just not an interesting. Especially, you're following up Darkseid War. You're following up one of the best Justice League stories, certainly of the modern times, and that's what you got, really? A stupid alien invasion? Just not an interesting book. I don't think the art has been that great in it, to be honest. I felt like his art did not live up to his usual standards, maybe because he was rushing to meet deadlines. This book has been something of a disaster. I don't want to say it's not New 52 Teen Titans bad or New 52 Red Hood and the Outlaws bad, but it's bad. And a Justice League book has no business being bad. It should be in my opinion, I don't write comics for a living, obviously, but Justice League should be a pretty easy book to write, I would think. Not to make it great, but just to make it passable. And this is not passable right now. So Justice League is my pick for the low light. Todd, what would you say?
Besides the Bumblebee cover of Titans, I'm going to go ahead and say Suicide Squad #1, just because Jim Lee was promoted as having just being very involved, and it was only a handful of pages. It was, very forced, and it didn't feel right. And I don't even remember the writer of it, but I knew that I didn't like it. And although I will say that the Justice League versus Suicide Squad was better, that event was better than either the Justice League book or the Suicide Squad book. So there's that.
Yeah, I haven't read that crossover, but I've heard that. That was Josh Williamson that wrote the crossover. The guy that writes Suicide Squad, I think his name is Rob Williams.
Mm-hmm.
I've just never been able to get behind that guy's writing. I don't know what it is. I read the characters and they don't read like I would hear the characters in my head, and that always throws me off in a comic when that happens. Russell, let's go to you. What has been the low light thus far in the team books in your...
I'm going to echo you, but I'm going to add something. Justice League has been by far the most disappointing, and not because it's the worst of the books. It's because of what it was supposed to be. Because we talk about Brian Hitch following Jeff Johns, and I mean, that's rough enough. But add to it that Brian Hitch was also following Brian Hitch on his JLA run prior to Rebirth, which, despite all the delays, was still a pretty damn good Justice League book. And he comes in with all this promise, all this hype, and just falls flat on his face. Basically falling back on the same old tropes and the same old stuff that he's done before, giving us nothing. Not even the good characterizations that he had during his initial Justice League of America run. Something that I felt, he had a pretty good handle on. I was enjoying that and thought, okay, well, if he can bring this over to the main Justice League title and take that on, this will be great. And it was a monumental letdown. And for my money, Justice League should be the flagship book of DC Comics. This is the book where your biggest and best superheroes are all working together. This should be the main continuity driver of your line. But Justice League feels like supplemental filler at this point. It is inconsequential.
Yep.
It means literally nothing in the grand scheme of things. And that, to me, is just so frustrating, because that's the book that I want to be driving everything forward, and at best it is spinning its wheels.
Yep. I can't say anything else other than that. Jennifer, what is your pick for the low light thus far in these team books? And which ones are you pulling, by the way?
I'm only pulling Titans and Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, which I reread today, and I'm okay with the story on this book, but the artwork is just freaking terrible. The faces are so weird, the jaws, the mouth, the teeth.
I agree.
it's just awkward to look at, and I try to find something redeeming in some of the artwork, but it's just not there. Like, I just don't like any of it. And it's enough to make me drop the book because, like I said, the story's okay, but I like Black Canary's, little one-liners, her little zingers in there, but I'm not going to read a book just to read her zingers because I like her better on Green Arrow.
Yeah, that's a good point. Batgirl and Bros of Prey was a book that I read the first couple of issues, and I liked the writing, but man alive, that art was difficult and jarring to me. So I can certainly understand that. Nick, your pick for the low light of Rebirth thus far in this family.
It's got to be Justice League. I mean, Greg, you called it out for being bad, and Russell kind of touched on it a little bit too, but to me it commits one sin that no Justice League book should ever commit. It's gotta be Kane! It commits the one sin that no Justice League title should ever commit, and the fact that it's just boring and uninteresting. Like, I'm okay with a bad Justice League title if things are happening, and it kind of has this kinetic feeling about it, but like, it's the equivalent of being taken to Toys R Us when you're a kid, and your mom and dad say, all right, pick out any 7 or 8 toys that you want out of the store, and then taking them home and just sitting them there and looking at them. He doesn't do anything with these characters. Like, he's got the 7 biggest guns in the whole freaking DC universe, and they just kind of stand around and do the same old cliche tropes over and over again, and it's awful. Like, I don't understand what the point of the book even is at this point.
It reminds me of Russell. You might remember this one, a cutaway gag on Family Guy that shows Indiana Jones as he's about to reach for the mystical artifact, and he just stands there staring at it, and it just keeps going on and on. And then Ralph Cramden shows up and is like, "Will you just pick it up already?"
Yes.
So I think the point is it's just got to be a placeholder till the movie comes out. Is that what it feels like to me? I mean, it's like.
But I have a hard time seeing them doing anything major with the title when the movie comes out, because I think the rumor is they're going to be in the midst of that Snyder and Capullo Batman event and probably won't want to take any of the focus away from that, I would think.
It's hard to say when that's going to, how long that's going to be, because, that starts up in July as the event goes, and I would think that maybe by November that could possibly or potentially be over. But it wouldn't surprise me, like what Todd is alluding to. It would not surprise me, actually, if they don't necessarily do a relaunch of the book per se. Well, they keep the numbering the same, but I could see a creative team shift coming.
But that's 12 issues away.
Yeah,
we have 12 issues of Justice League before the movie comes out.
I dropped the book long ago, so I mean, it is at this point.
I've been out of Justice League for a while now, and even though some of the previews I've read look better than what has come before, I wasn't going to get fooled again. I was like, nope.
You can't afford to. There's just too much. There's too much high quality stuff out there right now to really take a chance on a terrible book like Justice League bouncing back.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for a creative team shift, and hopefully it's a good one.
Right.
I've read Justice League since junior high, and I can't remember a run that was this bad sustained. Justice League Detroit was better than this.
What about Extreme Justice?
That doesn't count. That doesn't count.
What about Cry for Justice?
That kind of counts because it was a mini, and then they moved it over. I don't know.
But yeah, I know what you mean though. For a consistent run, yeah, I know what you mean.
Perhaps
for
Cry
the
for Justice,
flagship.
you could at least get some like Mystery Science Theater 3000 type enjoyment out of it, where you just make fun of it. This isn't even fun to make fun of. It's just boring.
Yeah, it lacks any kind of fun factor whatsoever.
Yep.
To get it there.
Well, that sets up perfectly. We've got a lot of complaints about some of the books in this team line. Let's offer some solutions potentially, or at least some things that you'd like to see moving forward. I can think of no better person to start with on this one than you, Nick. Nick, what is the change or changes, I suppose, that you would like to see going forward in the team books?
A completely new approach to Justice League, first of all, to include possibly a roster shift, a concept shift, and a creative team shift, whatever it takes to get that book back on track. But I'll throw you another one. I think there's something really intriguing in having the idea. I know it's coming up pretty soon in that crossover with Deathstroke. Titans and Teen Titans are going to cross over a little bit. I would love to see a little bit more frequent interplay between those two books in terms of the Titans serving as something of a more relatable mentor to the Teen Titans rather than their, truly adult counterparts like Batman or the Flash or what have you.
I like it. It's pretty good. And because you said a new approach to Justice League, that's actually the first one I wrote. Literally, word for word, a new approach to Justice League. I wrote that down. And I don't know what that approach would be. I don't know if it's as simple as a character changing the lineup. It's got to be a creative team change, obviously. But just something different, some new approach to Justice League. One of the things I wrote down and then scratched out was the possibility of maybe a rotating roster, kind of like Justice League Unlimited. I don't know if it would work in a comic book. I think it would be worth trying.
It could work in terms of maybe not an issue by issue basis, but certainly a storyline by storyline basis.
Arc to arc, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and maybe take that kind of approach with it and do something different with the book. And then the other thing that I would really like to see is, and this may get me some heat with some listeners, I don't know, but Brett Booth off of Titans and replaced with someone good. I don't know who. Lee Weeks. That issue, that Superman issue that was drawn by Lee Weeks, I thought was excellent, and I think it was leagues better than any of the issues drawn by Brett Booth. So,
Hell, I like his layouts, and I like the way he draws faces up close. But the rest of the stuff, the distant stuff, I don't like as much.
Hell, a suggestion for any of the DC books. To my knowledge, Assad Ribic isn't really doing much. Sign that dude.
That would be a hell of a get, and he should immediately be on Justice League.
Not with Brian Hitch, though.
Not with Brian Hitch. Hell no. He should just be the artist with whoever replaces Brian Hitch.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan Abnett's already writing like 800 books a month, so have him do Justice League too.
Yeah.
Russell, your change or changes that you like seeing the team line going forward?
I would. I'm going to echo, a lot of what's been said and what I alluded to earlier about Justice League. It needs a creative team shift. I really like that idea of Ribic drawing it, by the way. And I think I know who might be a good writer to take it over, and might be a little bit out of left field, but I'm going to say Christopher Priest.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I would be down with that.
I think he would be
interested, but I'd be down with it.
Yeah, I don't know what his interest level in writing a team book would be, but I have just loved what he's done with Deathstroke and his ability to find voices, like unique and individual voices for so many different characters, surprisingly, within that book.
Including Batman and Superman. Yes,
and he's written Batman and Superman very well in his time. He's also written Damian very well. And that's something that I think, he's kind of made a case for him being a viable choice to take over Justice League. But if I can't have him, and if Greg Rucka feels like sticking around, I'd kind of like to get that Greg Rucka Justice League run that we've never had.
Yep.
So
Scott Snyder, for God's sake.
Or a Scott Snyder Justice League run. If he and Greg Capullo really want to have a real reunion, put him on that as an ongoing. Because Greg Capullo is about to sign he did just sign an exclusive deal with DC all over again. Because when he comes back, he's in a multi-year contract again. So I'm like, let's do the damn thing.
I think part of the problem with the art on a book like Justice League is that it's twice a month. And though, Superman or Green Arrow or something, you can have similar artists. But if you're trying to do the prestige team with the prestige creators, you want to have consistency. And, you're not going to get Capullo. But Wonder Woman has done a nice job of this, balancing the artists.
Yeah.
And we'll talk that soon.
There are other artists out there that could work with Capullo, and I think could not necessarily match him exactly, but people that could at least keep a high enough level of quality that Justice League would feel a bit more consistent. But of course, its art is only going to take you so far, because you could make the current Justice League book look really pretty, but it would still suck. And
or could it benefit if Greg Rucka, for instance, were writing it? Could it benefit from the approach that Wonder Woman has taken with two parallel stories with two different artists doing those different stories that maybe take place at different times.
I actually think that Justice League of America could transition to something like that and be a more useful book.
Very good.
You want to talk about an SPANK IT podcast? Imagine like Snyder and Capullo, and then pulling in the third member of like what could be an awesome team. Throw Snyder's other greatest collaborator, Jock, in there, and Nick Duke just starts to do things that are
some consider to be unnatural.
Exactly.
Sounds like the most natural thing in the world, really.
Jennifer, what about you? What change or changes would you like to see in the team books?
I got to follow that joke. Well, it sounds like Justice League needs to get its shit together, but I'd really like to see Batgirl drawn with not like horse teeth and shit. So I'm good with that.
Man, these people hating on Batgirl.
No, listen.
I am the only person that does not hate the art.
I like the book, but the art is what you have to like. You have to deal with the art to get through the book, and like I get it. I will say the art to me has steadily improved since the start. It's still not great by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not as bad as it was in the Rebirth or the number one.
Agreed. I think that the teeth issue has largely improved. I haven't noticed it at all.
It's the jawline. It's the noses, especially the nostrils. Everybody,
the face, all the whole face.
Everybody appears to have like 1980s WWF cocaine snorting nostrils. Like it's really tough. Like they're massive.
We saw a lot of that last weekend.
Yeah, we did.
Everyone is Italian in this book.
Oh man, it was a good weekend. Anyway, yeah, so Todd, change or changes that you'd like to see heading forward in the team books?
Just let's get a prestige creative team on Justice League, and everybody has their own suggestions. I'd like to say it may never happen, but if DC and Mark Waid could ever reconcile, get him in there, give him the keys, and just go crazy, Mark Waid. And artist, I would say Barry Kitson, just because I like that particular pairing. So
very
something
cool.
we before, but it would be a lot better than what we have now.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. And there was another one that popped in my mind as something that I would like to see, and I cannot for the life of me now remember. Oh, I want to see John Kent on the Teen Titans.
Good suggestion.
Also, I want to see Emiko Queen also on the Teen Titans. So boot off whoever you need to make room for her.
Who came up with that idea? Must be a pretty smart guy. Decent.
Well, from what I understand, that comic book company went out of business. Quite frankly, they could not compete in the marketplace, folks.
Son of a bitch.
All right. Moving forward, let's go to a line of titles that we have termed the quote classic DC heroes, and this. Quite frankly, folks, we could not come up with a better name, and it's not for us to say if you could have come up with a better name.
And if you're wondering if these categories at this point have become completely arbitrary, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Including the category that is the most arbitrary thing ever, but anyway.
The classic DC heroes encompass the titles Wonder Woman, Aquaman, or Aquaman.
There it is.
As some know it. Flash, Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, and Green Arrow. What books benefited the most out of these titles, book or books, benefited the most from Rebirth? Let's get started with Russell. Which books benefited the most? Or book?
Wonder Woman. Pretty clearly.
Yeah.
Not to disparage the initial New 50 run from Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang, but when Meredith and David Finch took over the book, there was a marked drop in quality to the point of it really bottoming out, and it couldn't pick itself back up. No matter what they did, they were just not the right creative team. But holy shit, has Greg Rucka, Liam Sharp, and Nicola Scott ever turned in an all-timer? They come onto the book, and it's like people who were not Wonder Woman fans suddenly realizing this is how you tell a good comic book story. And I said at the beginning, before I really got real deep on Deathstroke, Wonder Woman, especially in the Lies story arc, might just be the smartest book of Rebirth. It's so intelligently crafted, and Liam Sharp as an artist, I mean, he's been in the business for a long time, but this is the work of his career. He came on and turned in just the best looking art he has ever done in his life, and with such an iconic character, and at what a time to do it too, with Wonder Woman having such an increased profile with her movie coming out. And you can go down to the comic book store and you can pick up some tremendous Wonder Woman comics currently running right now. Like, you wouldn't just be stuck in like one or two trades that are good. No, you can get on the ongoing book, and it's fucking great throughout. That, to me, had turned Wonder Woman into like the marquee character for DC Comics. So that in itself has got to be the biggest turnaround and the biggest benefit of Rebirth for any one of these characters.
Awesome. Let's move over to Todd. Todd, what, in your opinion, has benefited the most from Rebirth out of these
Wonder Woman, just like Russell said, Wonder Woman went from having a terrible post-Astral Chan creative team into having great creators and amazing parallel storylines. There hasn't been a bad issue to date, and though there have been other in this category that are solid, Wonder Woman is the best representative of a book that has benefited from the Rebirth.
Jennifer, again, you don't have anything to compare it to prior, but what book would you pick out of these that's benefited the most in your eyes?
I'm just going to say Wonder Woman because it's amazing.
It is pretty amazing. That's true. It might even be wonderful.
Perhaps.
Oh, I think we just found some music for the podcast.
Mr. Wonderful. All right, Nick, what book or books has or have benefited the most from Rebirth?
Well, just to say, all of these books are books that I've read. I mean, I only read about 3 issues of Flash and kind of dropped it after that, but I am currently pulling all of the other books in this category. And to me
too.
Clearly it's Wonder Woman. I mean, it has to be by a landslide Wonder Woman. But let's throw a little shout-out to those 2 Green Lantern books, because the Green Lantern franchise had really fallen on hard times, if you will, before the Rebirth initiative came along. And the drastic improvement in the Green Lantern franchise is also something to laud. So Wonder Woman by a mile, but then behind that, the Green Lantern titles.
Yeah, I actually put Green Lantern for this category, and the reason is because I wasn't reading Wonder Woman before Rebirth. So I can't, while I can certainly tell that it's markedly improved because it's an amazing, arguably the best book in Rebirth, but I don't have that comparison like I do with Green Lantern. And what's especially impressive about the Green Lantern books, and what's especially impressive about Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, is the same writer who has been writing Green Lantern for the last 3 years, and in my opinion doing a mediocre job of it, is now writing Hal Corps and doing an amazing job at it. The transition between, especially, Robert Venditti's first year or two on Green Lantern was pretty good, but his last arc, or his last 2 arcs really, were not good at all. Actually, some of the worst Green Lantern stories that I had read in a while in the main title. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps has been like going back to the Jeff Johns era, the closest that we can get to it, and it's been an incredible turnaround. That Green Lanterns has been a very almost breathing life into the franchise, and adding these 2 new characters and focusing on them and bringing a new dynamic that we haven't seen before in a Green Lantern book. So I went with the Green Lantern books just because I can actually compare it to what was happening right before Rebirth started. And it truly is a night and day shift from Hal Jordan wearing a leather trench coat and having long hair and doing whatever the hell he was supposed to be doing in the Renix Storyline. Yeah.
Wearing a gigantic gauntlet on his hand that he couldn't actually fully control, and
turning
having 2 companions on a spaceship that nobody gave one single solitary fuck about.
With the ultra exciting spaceship named Darlene.
Ugh.
Anyway, are you more or less interested in family of titles than you were before Rebirth? For me, this is an easy answer, much more, in that I am pulling all of these except for Flash. So the answer for me is not even close. Let's move on. Todd, are you pulling more or fewer of these titles, or are you more or less interested in these titles than you were before Rebirth?
Yeah, I'll say I'm definitely more interested. I'm getting all of these except for, let's see, I believe it is Green Lanterns, the plural, and Flash. And I'll still read Green Lanterns in trade. I think it was just I was getting too many books, and I really enjoyed the first couple issues that I picked up of that. So I may even catch up on Flash. I think just this particular line of unaffiliated, non-family, quote-unquote, titles, that with the exception of the Green Lanterns, they're all really strong. And
yep,
there are good things and about all of them. I would say the Green Arrow has suffered from inconsistent art, but story-wise has been very solid, too.
Awesome. Who I've gotten Todd's. Have I gotten anyone else's yet?
Besides yours?
No.
No, I don't even think I've gotten... Oh, yeah, I've got mine, yeah. Okay, so... let's move over to...
Is Greg drinking during the podcast? What the hell's going on?
No, my short-term memory is fading.
I know what's happening. You told me you do this. You're watching that damn basketball game and trying to podcast at the same time, aren't you?
No, it's not true. I mean, it is, but it's not the reason why.
Son of a bitch.
See?
No, let's move on to Jennifer. Jennifer,
Yes.
You are significantly more interested, I'm assuming, than you were before Rebirth.
I am. I'm pulling all of these except for Aquaman, but I did read Volume 1, The Drowning, and I did just drop Flash.
Gotcha. Let's move on to Nicholas. Von Nicholstein, are you more or less interested in these books than you were before Rebirth?
Much more, to the point where periodically I'll go down my pull list and kind of order them from like 1 to 20 or 25 or however many books are on my pull list in terms of how much I'm enjoying them. And these 5 titles I'm pulling, those again being Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Green Lanterns, Hal and the Corps, and Green Arrow, are routinely like 5 of my top 10 books on my pull list. Loving all of these and look forward to them each and every week.
Russell?
Certainly way more, because I'll admit that if things hadn't turned around in Rebirth for Green Lantern, I was honestly considering dropping it for the first time since like 2009, whenever I started pulling it regularly. But now I'm actually pulling all of these. I'm still pulling Flash, and I will say that, yeah, I can echo everything that has been said, and positive about these, and even Flash has maintained this ability to keep me interested in what's happening moving forward. It's not what you'd expect, because it's a slow burn story, and you would think that a story about Flash would move much faster than it does, but I think I'm starting to see the bigger picture of what Joshua Williamson is doing, what he's building. And while the art still does not wow me in the way that I so wish it would, the story is still there. And Aquaman is one that we haven't thrown a lot of praise to, but I think it deserves a good bit of it, because another Dan Abnett title with typically strong art. And I love this approach of making Aquaman more of a statesman-like character, more of he's the leader of a nation, and he acts like one. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, he's got a co-lead, not a romantic interest, but she is also his lover. But I would say that Mira is as important, and sometimes even more so, than Aquaman is in his own book.
Yep.
And if ever there has been a case made for Mira to have her own solo title, Jeff Johns did it first, and then Dan Abnett took that ball and ran with it. So
it's quite miraculous,
isn't it? She makes fans of people when they read her for the first time.
Yep.
So I think, there's one now. And I think that it's just time. But yes, my interest level in all of these titles is absolutely through the roof. And one thing I'll say about Green Lanterns, we talked about Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps feeling like it's a return to the Jeff Johns days, and it feels like a riffing on what Jeff Johns has done. It feels like Robert Venditti's kind of doing his his interpretation of that. But Green Lanterns actually at times feels like it's adding to the mythos, which is what Jeff Johns actually did whenever he was writing Green Lantern. So in that spirit, I would say that Sam Humphries is actually getting it closer to what Jeff Johns was doing in spirit, not so much like in literalism, but in the idea of adding to the mythos itself. Sam Humphries has successfully that by taking an idea that was introduced way back when, that being Frank Leminski, and turning him into something so much more than anybody ever thought he could be. So in that mindset, Sam Humphries is much closer to Jeff Johns than Robert Venditti is.
Very good. Let's move on to what has been the highlight of Rebirth in this particular family. Jenny, let's start with you. What's been the highlight for you thus far in Rebirth? Could be a story, could be a book, a title, whatever.
Oh boy, this one is extremely difficult to narrow down. Honestly, I could tell you a highlight from all of these books, but Wonder Woman just stands out to me. Her year one storyline, I think, affected me more because I got to see her background and her kind of origin story there, and it just made me fall in love with it, although I do prefer Liam Sharp's artwork. But there's something about it. It has this quality that none of the other books have, although I do love these other books. Jessica over in Green Lanterns just blows me away in every book. She has this quality to her that is just, I don't know, it grabs my attention, and I'm really fumbling through this because I'm trying to narrow it down, and it's freaking impossible. And same thing with Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, like the number 16 with Guy Gardner. God, I love that book. So I will say those are my highlights.
Awesome. Glad you're enjoying these so much. This does, to be honest, this does feel like the greatest hits of Rebirth in regards to titles. These are arguably have been the cream of the crop in terms of consistency as well. Todd, what's been the highlight you in this family?
Okay, I'm going to go with two. I'll say my favorite Wonder Woman issue, and Wonder Woman's been the best of these titles, was the Wonder Woman in the Asylum, when she's just like overwhelmed, all this knowledge just been dropped on her, was probably my favorite of the run. So I would put that up. But I also like the Aquaman issue where Mira just the chains were off and she just kicks all kinds of ass on the
Oh, that was great.
That was so good. So a tie between those two, just like the Diana learning about her origins and everything kind of coming together, and then just Mira being Mira and breaking out. So cool.
Yeah, I put as my highlight Wonder Woman. This was the hardest, I think, of the highlight categories to narrow down for me. Actually, I know it was. And I went with Wonder Woman, but I could have easily gone with that Mira issue. I could have easily gone with any number of moments from Green Lanterns or Hal and the Corps. I could have gone with several of the Green Arrow issues. But Wonder Woman, to me, has had a level of consistency that is unrivaled, in that there has not been an issue to me that has felt like a step back, that has felt like a slowdown. Even an issue where you can say, oh, well, nothing really happens in that issue, it doesn't matter because it's so engrossing and the characters are so engrossing. And these are characters that, frankly, I've never had an attachment to before. Steve Trevor, I've never really cared about, except in Justice League when Jeff Johns was writing him. But, I didn't know anything about Etta Candy. I didn't know anything about the Cheetah. I didn't know anything about pretty much any of these characters outside of Wonder Woman. So it really was. It's really been an incredible ride to get there. Nick, what is your pick for the highlight of Rebirth in this family?
Clearly, it's Wonder Woman, but I'll drill it down to two specific elements. You touched on it a little bit, Greg. The cheetah. I never knew that I could care about this character as much as I do now. This is on the level. I'm not going to say close to the level. On the level of Jeff Johns and Sinestro in terms of character reclamation at this point. I absolutely love everything that Rucka has done with this character, and I think it's clear at this point, almost 20 issues in, that his run, just like the Found's Green Lantern run, is almost in a way more about the cheetah than it is about Wonder Woman. I think whenever there's eventually an omnibus of this era, that will become even more apparent. I mean, Russell made reference earlier to, Tom King's Batman being written for the omnibus. I think this is the book that is the most written for the omnibus of any of these Rebirth titles thus far. And the other element I want to touch on, like Russell said, he's been around for a while, but the emergence of Liam Sharp onto my radar as a comics fan has just been mind-blowing. He has gone from a guy I knew hardly anything about to one of my favorite artists working in comics right now, just because sometimes you get that perfect match of artist to character and concept, and it seems like this Wonder Woman was the book that Liam Sharp born to draw, and it's just been outstanding.
Yeah, have to agree with all that stuff. Russell, your turn, my friend. The highlight of Rebirth to this point.
Shall we make it a clean sweep and just say Wonder Woman? Of course. I mean, it's how can you not? Everything that's been said up to this point, there's very little that I can add up, beyond that. But a book that we haven't mentioned very much on is Green Arrow, and I know that we all loved the Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino run on that title, but he struggled a bit after that with one of the Arrow writers. I don't remember which one it is. One of the executive producers.
Sokolowski, I think it's the name.
No, I think it was Guggenheim or Berlanti that took over writing Green Arrow after Andrea Sorrentino left. He was only on for like a couple of issues. It was just long enough to put Felicity Smoke in the series, and then it was practically gone and completely forgotten about. And that's when Ben Percy took over. And I got to say, much like Robert Venditti on Green Lantern prior to Rebirth, I was not impressed with Ben Percy's take on Green Arrow. He did this weird werewolf social justice thing that just didn't. These two ideas did not get well. And while he did have Patrick Zurcher on art for a little while, best thing about the book, it was pretty good. And Ben gets with Greg's favorite name to say, and
Otto Schmidt.
Yes, and Juan Ferreira
yes.
doing the off issues or whatever. These two trading back and forth. It's like Robert Venditti on Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. Complete turnaround, a market turnaround that feels like classic Green Arrow. All the things that I love about Green Arrow all rolled into this beautiful, wonderfully entertaining story that, while it did have a couple of weird issues in there with Emiko Queen and her mom, and a dragon for some reason, beyond that, it's been a very solid title. It's been hugely entertaining. I like this Ninth Circle overarching story. I like the presence of the older Merlin, and while I personally prefer Otto Schmidt, I get why people like Juan Ferreira. He's a good artist. He does some pretty amazing things, especially with his colorization. But that is a book that I wanted to throw a little love to, because you guys have already pretty much verbally filleted Wonder Woman to every possible degree that I could. I can't follow that, but Green Arrow deserves plenty of praise as well.
Absolutely. One small correction: there is no Otto Schmidt. There is only Otto Schmidt. So,
we will have to record that, and anytime his name is mentioned, Todd, I'm going to make your job a lot harder. You're going to have to splice that in every time somebody says Otto. Greg, what
Otto
is it?
Schmidt.
There it is.
Otto Schmidt.
Yes, every time that name is mentioned, that sound clip has to be spliced in, and I
that
apologize
happens,
in
I'm going to
advance.
bring it with me when I go to the bank and stuff. It's like, yes, I'd like to fill out a check in the name of Schmidt. And, yeah, so that'll be fun. So anyway, let's move on. Everybody's given their highlights.
Yes.
So let's move on to the lowlights of Rebirth in this family. I'm going to leave this up for popular vote. Who wants to start us out?
I'll give mine because mine's kind of boring. But all these books are so good that by default I have to say Flash. I read 3 issues, and not that it was bad. It was just kind of okay. And as we've discussed on Hard-Traveling Fanboys before, kind of okay isn't going to stay on my pull list, and the art kind of bugged me. But really, there is no true lowlight here to me. I've enjoyed pretty much everything, even some of the Green Arrow missteps that Russell mentioned. There was enough stuff in there that kept me engaged. So that would be my answer. Would be Flash.
Yeah, that's my answer as well. I read the first 2, maybe 3 issues. I read the Rebirth, and I think the first 2 issues after that.
Yeah, I think that's what I did as well.
It just didn't grab me.
Yeah.
The artwork bothered me, and it felt, I don't know, something about it felt off. But it was, again, not horrible or anything, just not enough to stay on my pull list. So that's my pick. Not much to say about it, really. Not that bad. So let's go over to Todd. Todd, what is the low light thus far of the Rebirth?
Flash. Why does he have the lines on his costume?
Thank you.
Good question.
Why?
I hate
not
it.
that it's. Yeah, I mean,
because it's really a suit of armor.
I guess so. Yeah, yeah. It looks like strap-on football pads, which also. Yeah, I don't know.
Strap-on.
That's all right. No. Did I say?
Hey,
more material for the All Spank It podcast. All Spank.
That's one of those Jim Lee leftovers from the New 52 that just didn't go away in Rebirth.
Makes no sense. My Flash is on TV.
Yep.
Well, Russell, what is your pick for the low light thus far of Rebirth?
By default, it would be overall title. It would be The Flash, but I'm certainly enjoying it more than you guys are, clearly, because I'm still pulling it. And like I said before, I'm actually relatively enjoying it. Once it starts on the Rogues, especially, I've actually really liked what they've done there, and I really love how Joshua Williamson writes Captain Boomerang. He's hilarious, but I can see why this book would not work for a lot of people, and it probably does read better in trade. But as far as the low light, the real low light for me is that 2-part Emiko Queen story from Green Arrow. I mean, I dislike that more than anything I've read in Flash. So that would be the standout for me as far as the low lights go. But like I said, Green Arrow rebounded incredibly well after that.
Yeah, I remember that being my bottom book of the week two or three times, twice. The 2-part story, both of those are my bottom book of the week when I read them, so I can relate to that. Jennifer,
I can relate.
Low light to that.
Spank that.
We are determined to do that All Spank It podcast, aren't we?
It's gonna happen. And then Russell was talking about still pulling it, so
you don't want to keep. Never mind.
So Jennifer, your pick for the low light as far.
Why do y'all make me follow this shit?
Rebirth.
Yes, The Flash. I reread the entire run this week, and I still didn't like it. I read a lot this week, but no. This is the things that I do for the Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
This is a level of dedication that I need
Spank
to
it.
I was going to say. I was like,
Yeah, that's the kind of dedication I need to have.
Nothing awkward about any of that.
I was going to say, is anybody going to say anything, for God's sake? Do I have to keep talking the whole
my
time?
God. I've
Let it
never
sit
had an
there.
awkward silence on a an intentionally awkward silence on a podcast before. That was awesome. Woo.
That was fantastic. But yeah, so Flash
I'm about
was
Dusty
Jennifer's
Rhodes
pick.
on this thing, Daddy. Oh.
He wore his title ass out.
What a toilet seat! Whew. Getting WrestleMania
We're
week
turning
kicked
into
off a little
survey
early.
says right over here.
That was a Matthew Perry level of awkwardness.
Oh, Lord.
Oh.
All right.
Beautiful.
Jesse Eisenberg is Lex Luthor. Awkward. With a Jolly Rancher.
Oh. Why did the guy let him feed it to him? Anyway, that's beside the point.
Because it was cherry.
It seems like at a certain point you'd be like, no, I'm not touching that.
No, that's kind of gross. I don't know where your hands have been, sir.
Oh, man. Anyway.
But I can guess.
What change would you like to see going forward in the family of these heroes?
Oh, it's getting more awkward.
So,
yes.
Nick, what changes would you like to see in the classic DC Heroes line?
It's hard to say something here because I've loved so much of what they've done, but the one thing I will say is, while I have loved both Green Lanterns and Hal in the Corps, I really want to know what it would be like for Simon and Jessica to serve as a larger part of the Corps. I would like to see more interaction between them and the more classic Green Lanterns. Not to say I want them to fully move over and the two books to merge, but I think there's room for something more of a crossover or like a bit more interplay, so to speak.
Seconded.
Very good. Russell, so is that your pick as well?
That's one of the things I was going to say, but one thing I would like to see more of in The Flash is that book is really at its best when Barry is acting as a mentor type character, not unlike how Superman has been acting with John. So whenever you have a more positive interaction between Flash and, say, a younger speedster, not, let's say, for example, the current or the New 52 Wally West, some of those interactions have been really great. Some have just been so entertaining to read. So I feel like that title would be a lot stronger if it focused in more on that and maybe made Flash more of a mentor type character to certain other young heroes. As well as keeping focused on the rogues and like building them and more of his classic rogues gallery rather than trying to create new villains, which is what they started to do at the beginning, and that's something that I just feel like isn't benefiting the book very much at all. And not to define a point on it, but a permanent change in artist wouldn't kill it either.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great transition into mine, actually, Russell, because it's funny you said all that, because one of the things I wrote down is a creative change on the Flash and or a return of the Flash family concept. And by that I mean a return to the Mark Waid, Jeff Johns era of having multiple speedsters in the book that are having, you could position Barry, like you said, as the mentor figure, but I would like to see the book be more of Barry and the two Wallies running around with each other, or reintroducing Jesse Quick, which would be nice synergy with the TV show.
Or what they've teased recently and have Jay Garrick come back.
Jay Garrick, outstanding. That's great, yeah.
That one's got to be happening, right? I mean,
yes, they actually teased that in issue 9 because they showed his helmet on the last page as something that Barry encountered inside the Speed Force.
And plus the original Rebirth special, I mean, JSA is coming at some point.
Yep, that is for sure a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that would be great to see that kind of like, my memories of the Mark Waid Flash are those big splash pages of, Wally and Bart and Jay and Max Mercury and Jesse Quick all running side by side, or Wally and his kids and Barry from the Jeff Johns era, Barry, Wally, the kids, Jay, all running side by side. I think that there's room for that. We never really got that Flash family book that we were supposed to get after the return of Barry Allen due to Flashpoint and various other things that happened. So, hey, I am all for that. So, Jenny, what changes would you like to see in this line of books?
Basically everything you guys have said about Flash. Seconded.
New artist and everything.
Yes. Please.
Very good. I like that. It's good. Todd, what changes would you like to see?
Well, I was really hoping for Green Lantern in the Corps for Kyle Rayner to become a Green Lantern and have the crap mask.
Yeah.
How current are you, Todd?
Yeah,
No, I was
might
kidding.
want to read up.
It just happened.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just kidding about that.
Okay.
So, yeah, no, it's got to be Flash.
Me and Nick
It's
took
gotta
that real serious.
Yeah, I was like, wait, just a second.
Oh, I was like, Todd's joking?
Yeah, but, you know, last time we
listen,
had...
Now wait just a damn minute.
There's nothing about Kyle Rayner or his existence that I find a joking matter.
He
So,
does.
Okay.
remember last podcast when I hadn't seen that Laurel Lance was coming back, and that was, of course, just a tease at the mid-season premiere, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I have a feeling that 90s Kyle Rayner, Daryl Banks era Kyle Rayner will stick around for a bit, or they'll do something with him. But anyway, no, we've got to get Flash back. We've got to fix the Flash, much like Justice League. Flash was the premier book of the Silver Age. It ushered in Silver Age. It almost, shall we say, it ushered in the modern era of Jeff Johns and Flash and rebirths in general when we had the Flash rebirth and we had Jeff Johns doing his epic run on Flash. I think the Flash is such an important comic. It's even the most watched of all the DC shows on the CW. So I think we should give it a better creative team, or at least a more prestigious creative team, or maybe bring it more sci-fi like it used to be. I mean, just pick a more, and this is going to have to be after the button, obviously. They're going to have to do something, but I'd like them to have more of a classic Silver Age look, too, with the onesie. And
Yes,
and
more
everything.
simplified
And,
costume. I agree completely.
yeah, it fits in his ring and doesn't have, and it's easier to draw, for crying out loud.
Yep. You guys know what a huge Jim Lee mark I am, and I have to say, I even thought at the time that's I didn't mind a lot of his costume redesigns. In fact, I think he's good at that a lot of times. But one of the issues that he has is he goes so detailed on these costumes that it ends up making them too complicated, and that's what he did to the Flash. And it has not been adjusted since then. I'll put it that way. Very good. So we blew through that topic by our standards pretty quickly. So let's move on to the final family that we have to talk about. Jimmy Hart's first family. So Todd, King Kong Bundy, Big John Studd. Who would you knock out of Jimmy Hart's family?
Well, let me tell you something, brother. That was very bad. Hacksaw Butch Reed, actually, would be... No, I mean the natural Butch
The natural. Thank
Yeah,
you. The natural
Butch Reed.
Hacksaw Butch Reed. I like that. I don't know what that
Yeah,
is.
well, that's an NWA guy.
Yeah, that was his
It's
NWA
Hacksaw.
name.
Yeah.
Really?
It was he bleached his blonde, his hair in WWF.
See, in my head, I had the amalgam version of Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the natural Butch Reed, like, combined together in some strange way.
Written, I don't even know who would write it. I don't know.
Grant Morrison.
But let's move on to the final. And as we mentioned earlier, his name is Hacksaw Butch Reed. That's Paul McCartney. I don't know what the hell that was.
The two can be a
Lord.
little similar. It's fine. It's fine.
So the final family that we have to talk about here is simply called Other.
Yep.
And this encompasses, of course, the Other family.
The other,
Which would be Blue Beetle, Hellblazer, or Heckblazer if you prefer, Harley Quinn, Deathstroke, and Cyborg. So, which of these books benefited the most from Rebirth? This is the most obvious to me for anyone that read any of the pre-Rebirth version of this book, and it's Deathstroke. I don't have anything more to say because I'll be revisiting this a little bit later. Russell?
Seconded. Deathstroke by a mile. It has improved in every conceivable way, from the writing to the art to just the concept that they've gone with. It's one of the most twisted and incredibly fun, if I can use that word, fun to read, despite the fact that it's dark as hell at times.
It is, yeah.
It goes into some really disturbing places that you don't really expect it to, but then it's like, did they just insinuate that incest has occurred?
It is
Spank It.
Yeah. that
It is
actually
the
happens in one of these issues. And I was like, what the
Spanking
fuck?
it or incest? Which one?
Incest.
Oh, okay.
Like,
or seemingly, yes.
yeah, it's seeming.
Seemingly.
We are in that territory now. But,
Where's Garner?
oh God, we'd never get through it. But yes, it's one of those that you just don't. I did not expect to like this book as much as I did. I thought, okay, I'll try it out. It's one of the Rebirth books. I'm pretty much buying all of the one shots. Why not? And I wound up just being intrigued. Now, I will say that the third issue just about lost me because I thought, well, this isn't coming together for me. But upon rereading it in a different mindset, I started to get pulled back in again. And then issue 4, wow, just blew my mind. And from then on, I couldn't possibly walk away. This is legit the smartest book in Rebirth.
Yeah, I mentioned on our podcast a few times that it is the most unexpectedly hilarious book I've read in terms of a book that I didn't think would have much humor in it at all, and finds humor in the least likely places because it's dark, it's a book that's gritty, it's a book that's violent, and yet every issue I find myself laughing out loud to myself reading it because of
laughing out loud to yourself. Sorry.
Yeah, there's nobody else in the room,
okay,
so I'm just yeah. Quite frankly, if you can't follow along with the podcast, it's real simple, folks. It ain't rocket science.
Listen. This is the
tweet
East Coast, and this Daddy of Two is up at 12:30, so I have no clue what the fuck is on right now.
Very good. Well, hey, what better time then to ask you what books benefited the most from Rebirth out of this line?
Seeing as how I'm reading none of them, and I've only read like maybe 5 issues total out of this entire group, I'm going to say Blue Beetle because Ted Cord.
Very good. Todd Weber, which of these titles has benefited the most from the Rebirth initiative?
Deathstroke, just because you guys keep mentioning it. Because I'm not buying any of these, but I do intend to read that one in the trade based on your recommendation.
Very good. I think you'll dig it. And I'm someone that has not had a whole lot of exposure to Chris Priest writing before. His books that he wrote back in the 90s were not in my wheelhouse at the time. So it's been a revelation to me. Are you more or less interested in this family of titles than you were before Rebirth? Well, and also I want to give you a chance, Jenny. Forgot to mention you. Are you pulling his books, and if so, which ones?
I did the one-shot of Blue Beetle, Hellblazer, and Cyborg, and then I read Volume 1 of Deathstroke.
Very good. Which of these books benefited the most from Rebirth, in your opinion?
Deathstroke.
Very good. Are you more or less interested in this family of titles? Well, that doesn't really apply to you. Russell, are you more or less interested in this family of titles than you were before Rebirth?
Technically, I guess I would say more because I'm pulling Blue Beetle and Deathstroke of these.
Yeah, me too.
But there was no Blue Beetle title after a while in the New 52. It got canceled around issue 12. There was a Deathstroke title, but I think it fell off pretty quick. I'll say that I enjoyed Hellblazer a bit more during the DCU run when it was written by James Tynion IV. Thought he had a pretty good thing going on there. So overall, I'd say slightly more, though this line also does include a book that I consider to be on par as far as its level of awfulness with Batgirl.
Gotcha. Nick, more or less?
Equally non...
Very good. Todd?
More.
Left.
Todd?
More.
More interested.
More?
Todd is more interested. That's what we're getting here. What has been the highlight of
More.
Todd is playing the Aquaman game by himself.
We haven't been Aquaman that much.
Fake it.
I know.
Well,
we have
I
said
would prefer if
spank
you
it a
didn't.
lot.
Well, I guess it is. Never mind.
What's been the highlight of Rebirth in this family? Deathstroke by a country mile. Russell, I'm sure you agree.
Indeed, I do.
Yeah. Let's just take it. Does anyone disagree with Deathstroke being the highlight of this family?
The reappearance of Ted Kord.
Okay.
Ted Kord in Rebirth special was awesome, but is he in the current book?
Yeah, he was good in the first. He was great in the 2 issues of Blue Beetle that I read, to the point where I wish that Blue Beetle was about him instead of Jaime Reyes.
And on an interesting note there, J.M. DeMatteis is actually joining the book as a writer with Giffen.
Now that could get me to come back, possibly.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm stuck around. Yeah. Jenny, what is your pick for the highlight of Rebirth thus far?
My pick is any interaction between Damian and Deathstroke. Fucking hilarious. Damian is savage as fuck. I love it.
Yes,
so much.
That was a great sequence of really a great sequence of issues there. And I would pick, if I had to pick a highlight from the run so far, I loved that issue when Slade and Rose went on the road together, and left. I just thought that was such a brilliant issue with their weird father-daughter dynamic, where he's like the worst dad in the world, but you can tell that even though he doesn't admit it, that he really, really cares for her. So that was really cool.
Is Jericho in the book?
Jericho is in the book.
Yes.
Yep.
With his perm?
With perm. Yep. He has the perm, and he does not, however, have a list. So.
Does he let his soul glow with his perm?
He does.
In a way, yes.
It's not quite, though. I will warn you, it's not to Alexander Luthor levels of the perm.
I just signed with my, I just did sign language for drink it in, man.
Drink it in, man. Very good. Oh, you know what? Jericho is sticking the okay, I'm not gonna
sticking the what?
He took it and he stuck it in, man. Let's go to what has been the low light of Rebirth in this family. Russell.
Cyborg by a lot. This book was hyped so much because the writer of the book was coming off of, like, he had a career in writing Spider-Man the Animated Series back in the 90s. Unfortunately, that's also how he kind of writes Cyborg. He writes it like it's a 90s cartoon, but not one of the good ones. Like, it's more like season 4 of Spider-Man the Animated Series.
Is it like Spider-Man Unlimited?
No, it's not like cutaway gags or anything. It's just nobody talks like that anymore, least of all a character who's supposed to be in his early 20s and is a black man living in Detroit.
But, Russell, is there either a low, medium, or dare we say high evolutionary involved?
If there were, this book would suddenly be maybe a lot.
Is there a counter-Earth or a counter-Cyborg?
Actually, yeah, there is kind of that in the book, but it's still... But it's still...
Plot thickens.
Strokes chin.
Among
other things.
Spank it. Yeah, the artwork
what
on the
an
book...
oddly erotic podcast this has turned into.
You came for the Rebirth, you stay... Oh, God. You came for the Rebirth, you stayed for the spanking.
Well, sometimes not at all.
Still.
Oh, God.
It's... where have we gone?
Thank
Completely
God
off the
I'm
rails.
not drinking, or else we would have just been... I don't know what would have become of this thing.
I'm 3 beers deep, and I'm still not giggling that like this. I got to drink more. Anyway, yeah, Cyborg also has some of the worst art that I've seen in Rebirth, and that's like backing it up against Batgirl. I would say that Cyborg might actually be a little worse, and it has not gotten any better. I don't see how this title can survive much longer. It's virtually unreadable. I don't know if a creative team shift would help, because this book also sucked prior to Rebirth, and it just hasn't gotten. It got worse. It's one of the books that actually got markedly worse. The new to the DCU YOU to Rebirth. So they canceling this book right now would be a mercy killing.
Damn. Nick, your pick for the low light of Rebirth in this family.
The one issue of Cyborg I read, it was really bad. I read the Rebirth and it was awful. So Russell can probably speak from a position of much more authority on the matter than I can, but I will say what I read of Cyborg was pretty terrible.
You are correct.
Todd?
I don't know. Pass.
Jennifer.
I didn't know pass was an option, but I'm going to say Cyborg. I couldn't even finish the one episode or the one issue I tried.
Yeah, I am actually – I haven't read any of Cyborg, full disclosure here, so I am going to go with Hellblazer Rebirth #1. As I mentioned on the podcast when I reviewed it, not a bad – I can't say it was necessarily a bad or awful comic, just unforgivably boring. Just a dreadfully boring, uninteresting slog that was adequately written, adequately drawn, but nothing that would ever make me want to pick up another issue of that book. So that's the end of that category. Final category. What?
No.
Did we not want to say what change we would like to see going forward?
No, that's what I'm getting to. That's what I'm
okay.
Oh.
I literally said change if Nick was not interrupting.
That was Todd. I didn't say anything, you son of a bitch. Stop blaming me for all your problems, Francis.
To me,
what change would you like to see going forward in this family of titles? Todd, we'll start with you.
I would like to see Hellblazer be excised from the DC universe proper and return to Vertigo. He just doesn't work for me as a PG character, even though they've tried to use him in the animated universe with Justice League Dark, and even the Justice League Dark book was fine in the New 52, but the character, the stories are so watered down, and the original Hellblazer, John Constantine stories, I have the whole run of that, the 300 plus issues. Those are great, and I'd like to see him brought back to Vertigo, maybe even Swamp Thing brought back to Vertigo, and just kind of let's keep the scary dark corner of the DCU in that world, and at least for the character's sake, make it a little more exciting.
That's bold, and I like it. That's the kind of hot takes we're here. Nick, changes you'd like to see in this field?
Ted Cord.
Ted Cord being the star of Blue Beetle.
Hey, I got a Blue Beetle one too. I would like to see Booster Gold added into the Blue Beetle title. Make it a blue and gold ongoing title that involves Jaime, Ted, and Booster going on adventures together in the same way that Jack Black and the Sasquatch went on it together.
You try. So, you're tempting my delirium right now, Greg.
Yep. So Russell, what changes would you like to see in the family?
I like what you suggested, Greg, and I would also say that the blue and gold theme could be continued by including Dr. Fate in that lineup as well. Because I think that he's an interesting wrinkle in that book, and when he comes around, it tends to make things a little better, at least in my view. But yes, fully agree on the more Ted Cord, please. He's the best part of that book. Like I said, the mercy killing of Cyborg's solo title, or at least a drastic shift in tone, presentation, and creative team. The current creative team has just got to go if that book is going to survive. I'm going to agree with Todd. Hellblazer needs to go back to Vertigo. It's been fun, trying to work him into the U proper. But overall, I don't feel like he really serves much of a purpose there. And while I have liked Swamp Thing in the main line, I think you could maybe possibly use him in both places. But yeah, Hellblazer needs to go back to Vertigo and a new ongoing series started there that feels more in line with where he originally came from. And I guess Harley Quinn can just keep on doing what she's doing because that book is DC's biggest seller next to Batman. And even though I'm not reading it because it doesn't appeal to me, I guess keep on doing what you're doing. You must be doing something right. People like your book. So that's it for me.
Jennifer, what is your change or changes that you'd like to see in this line of titles?
I like what Todd said about Hellblazer. That sounds good. I'd read it.
Awesome. Very good. And that brings us, ladies and gentlemen, as we've gone down the wormhole of Spank It and fictional podcasts and all kinds of things, we've reached the lightning round. This is where things get interesting. We like to shake things up a bit. And we have a litany of questions.
At the risk of earning your ire for daring to interrupt you, don't answer Todd's additional question that he suggested.
I was about to lead off with that question, actually.
I just wanted to be sure. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I understand.
Don't yell at me again.
I appreciate it. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Nick, and you won't be disciplined this time. That's going to be saved for the All Spank It podcast.
Oh, I like where this is going.
That's not
I probably won't like where it's going in a little bit, but I like where it's going right now.
So, this is a Todd suggestion. To start off the lightning round, these are brief snippet answers. There's not going to be any time or anything like that, but we want to keep it moving. Todd suggested title you would most like to add to the DC Rebirth's slate of titles right now. Let's kick it off with the man who suggested it himself, Todd.
Justice Society of America.
Love it. Jennifer.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder, but Booster Gold.
Yeah. Russell?
The book we've been promised since goddamn 2012. Where's my Shazam book?
All right.
My Jeff Johns, Gary Frank Shazam
Gary
book,
Frank,
preferably.
Yeah. Nick?
Mira.
Yep, long overdue. Years overdue, I would say. Yep, do it. And mine, I would cancel Superwoman and I would replace it with a Lois Lane ongoing that is no superpower involved, just Lois Lane being a reporter doing Lois Lane things, written by Greg Rucka.
Sold.
Agreed.
All right, let's move on to best under-the-radar title. The title that you think not enough people are reading right now. Nick?
I'll go Batgirl and the Birds of Prey.
Russell?
Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Todd?
Deathstroke.
Jennifer?
Deathstroke.
And I went with Deathstroke as well. Character that has benefited the most from the Rebirth initiative. I'll start us out with Superman. Russell?
Hal Jordan.
Todd?
Wonder Woman.
Jenny?
Cheetah.
Ooh. Nick?
Wonder Woman.
The book that has surprised you the most. Jennifer?
I'll say Batwoman because I didn't know I was going to fall in love with her.
Awesome. Todd?
Superman.
Russell?
Red Hood and the Outlaws for all the things I said before about it.
Nick?
Wonder Woman. I knew I'd like. Didn't know it would be the best book in comics.
And I am going with Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. Best writer in the Rebirth initiative. Russell?
Greg Rucka.
Jennifer?
Greg Rucka.
Todd?
Ty, Greg Rucka, and Dan Abnett.
Ooh, nice. Nick?
Greg Rucka.
I went with Christopher Priest. Best artist. I'll get us started on this one. Ethan Van Sciver. Jenny?
This is so hard. Okay, Ethan Van Sciver, Liam Sharp, and Jason Fabok. Sorry, all the three of those.
Russell?
incredibly difficult choice here, but I'm going to go with an under the radar pick, Dexter Soy.
Nice. Todd?
Liam Sharp.
Nick?
Liam Sharp.
Least favorite overall title?
Harley Quinn.
Nick?
Justice League.
Jenny?
Cyborg.
Russell?
Cyborg.
Justice League. For me. Favorite overall title? This is the big one. This was the hard one we talked about narrowing down before the show. Let's get started with Russell.
Spank it.
Give me a little time, Russell.
I'm going to just...
Yeah, exactly. Favorite overall title? This is incredibly difficult, but I'm just going to have to go with Superman. It's my
Nick.
personal favorite.
Wonder Woman.
Todd?
Wonder Woman.
Jenny?
Wonder Woman.
This was the toughest category for me. It was a 3-horse race. I got to go with Wonder Woman, but it was
Horse teeth.
Yeah, Divergent.
Barbara's got some.
Yeah. No, down to Wonder Woman, Deathstroke, and Superman for me. Those were the three that were going back and forth based on just how they make me feel when I read them. In the case of Superman, when I read a really good issue, but Wonder Woman wins out for me. Well, we made it, folks. That's the end of our rundown of DC Rebirth. Final thoughts, wrapping things up on the Rebirth initiative. For people that might have listened for whatever reason to these 3 hours and so minutes that we've been doing this, what kind of sales pitch would you give someone that hasn't picked up a DC comic in a while to try out Rebirth? Todd?
Can't be any more convoluted than AVX.
Jennifer, what would you tell somebody that's a person that maybe has never picked up a DC comic before?
Oh my gosh. If I can read them, you can read them.
Nick?
This is almost like DC 101. Cuts to the core of who these characters are.
Russell?
It has everything you see and everything you don't.
Don't.
No. Seriously though, it was everything that you read superhero comics for, and it'll remind you why you fell in love with them in the first place.
Yep, and I would say it makes Gandhi look like a child pornographer. So, with that being said, folks,
where have we gone?
We've reached the end of our long and winding road, and much like the long and winding road, we're ending in an unfulfilling manner. So let's bring this podcast to an end, and we'll see you next time when we have this massive gathering. Thank you to everyone who joined us from Conversation Comics, Todd Weber, from Geek and Sassy, Jennifer Smith, from Sellers Points, Russell Sellers, from Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Greg Phillips, and also the other guy. And we thank everybody for joining us. Nick Duke. And, we got to mention this, Nick. You can all reach all of us on Twitter. Everybody give their Twitter handles. Russell?
I am at Russell_Sellers.
And Todd?
At Todd Weber Guitar.
And Jennifer?
At Jenny Cruz, CRU2814.
And I am at gphillips8652. Nick is at NickDuke87. You can also reach Nick and I via Place to Be Nation email, gregp@placetobenation.com, nickd@placetobenation.com. Join the Place to Be Nation Comics Facebook page. Lots of stuff going on there. We recently had a picture of He-Man in the role of Robert Palmer in the Simply Irresistible video. So that's kind of so lots of cool stuff going on there. Nick, what do the people have coming their way next week from the Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
So as we mentioned earlier in the show, this was our 50th episode, and we are going to be taking the next month to kind of have some special shows to celebrate both our 50th, our landmark 50th episode and our 1-year anniversary. We're going to be doing some long-awaited shows. The culmination of the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe will be next week with the latest edition of Hard Travelers for Hire, where we will be joined once again by Russell and Todd as we broadcast on tape delay on location from Orlando, Florida. We're going to be joined on that one by our good friend Andrew Chandler Fraser Garner the Fifth or something like that. And yeah, and then the other podcasts we have scheduled for the month of April include Along Book Hunters on the book that gave us our name, that being the Hard Traveling Heroes, the classic Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams Green Arrow Green Lantern run, a countdown of our top 5 favorite Scott Snyder Batman issues of all time, and a very special Off the Page looking back at Batman Forever.
Yay! Well, the big question about the Hard Travelers for Hire, Hard Traveling Heroes, rather, that we're going to be reviewing is, will either of us have the guts to actually try to recite the, you've done a lot for the Green Man, and you've done considerable for the Purple Man scene. We'll see.
And I'm going to be honest, I know I won't, because there's no time I've ever read that scene where an incredibly offensive voice isn't getting it in my head, so I don't want to bring that to the podcast.
Sounds like Scatman Crothers always has that scene.
I was thinking more like Martin Lawrence or Eddie Murphy in the old man makeup from the.
Like baseball, we on deck.
We on deck.
Very good. All right. Well, speaking of being on deck, we're on deck. We're all going to bed right now. So you guys have a good one, and we will catch you down the road.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Fruity, delicious, fruity, all the fruities are Skittles. Thank you. Thank you. Don't call the shaking hands. Let's take this down. Thank you. Thank you.